in order that we may bring you the following special broadcast.
If I know that I turned 10,000 chips into at least 6 million chips, and I can do that again, and
Evening, everyone.
if I had gone through
Last poll showed that this was going to be a very close election.
six,
Tabs of it until we get the final returns in and know who the next president of the United States will be. H.G. Wells wrote that democracy is ceremonial, its feast, its great function is the election.
6,000 hands.
The election appears that Americans turned out record numbers. Possibly 75
I'm
million of us went
just
to poll.
because I wouldn't be able to get any better than a 20% of on a credit card or a loan, then I'm gonna go on that same logic. Got the 1968 election coverage going.
Mike Wallace will be reporting on the east. Roger Mudd will be reporting on the south. Dan Rather on the middle west. Joe Benny on the west. And Eric Severide will be giving us the benefits of his analysis from long years in Washington, watching these elections going through the year for all of us. Today, the presidential candidates and the vice presidential candidates, of course, went to the polls. All except Richard Nixon, that is. He voted absentee here in New York at his Fifth Avenue apartment last week along with his family because he thought he might not get back in time from his last night stand in California. He's flying here now and should be arriving back at Newark Airport in New York at any moment to spend the night at his
Hubert Humphreys had a all night long, all day and all night TV special in 1968.
We'll be going to their headquarters in the course of the CBS News Election Night 68 will continue in a moment.
Go ahead and no. That's my whole bank. If I had 10,000 chips.
Some other states, such as New Hampshire and Kansas, permit a certain number of their votes when all of the registered voters in precinct have cast their ballots to reveal the vote at that early hour before all the polls are closed. And so we have a few precincts in as of this hour. 214 precincts. 7,855. Less than 1%.
I'm live streaming.
Richard Nixon, the Republican candidate for the presidency.
I don't think it's picking up what you're saying because I have a microphone, but
22,200 votes, 47% of the votes. Humphrey 14.
I can go in the other room.
32%. George Wallace 9,679, 21% of the vote. Let's take a look at the various election headquarters on this election night. The mood at those headquarters as the ballots are beginning to be counted. First, I have the
election night coverage going. I don't think that it sounds over that.
We'll spend the intervening time at the Department of on Fifth Avenue and then go directly up to the 35th floor, where in a well-guarded retreat we will watch the return of some favorite politicians and close friends. Down here in the ballroom, the ordinary VIPs.
All that I'm paying attention to is this 10,000 chips, and then inside here in the pot, just how does my bank compare with this pot?
His insurance, he says, is in the border states of the South, where he has noted by his own soundings in the last week, he said a turnabout for Nixon. Apparently, Southerners, according to John Mitchell's views, have bought the Nixon argument that a vote for Humphrey is a vote for George Wallace, that is a vote for Humphrey, and it would be a waste of
Oh, two pair? My odds of winning are no better than 2%, but well, I just bet 2,000 chips, and now the pot is pretty massive, and so I'm going to go ahead and pretend that I have a good hand, and that is true. The Vice President wound up his campaign in better shape than the staff. Reporters who've been go ahead and go all in, then.
While much of the rest of the traveling party dragged themselves off the bed. The Humphrey stopped their ballots at the Marysville Township Hall, about 2 miles from their Lake Waverly home. Only a handful of voters were there at the same time. The little white frame building was jammed mostly with photographers.
Okay. That is that.
After voting, Mr. Humphrey posed for pictures, greeted some neighbors, and joked with reporters. Then he went home to sleep. Tonight he'll have dinner at the home of an old friend, and after Franklin, then come here to the Leamington Hotel to watch the return. Humphrey has been confident for more than a week that he's going to win. In fact, when out of the polls and the CBS News electoral count said he would lose by a landslide, he offered me an even money bet that he would win. When I asked him how much, he pulled a money clip out of his pocket and counted his bill. $31. This is David Shoemaker, Humphrey headquarters, now to Nelson Benton at Wallace headquarters in Montgomery, Alabama. It is here in Montgomery's Garrick Coliseum that George Wallace's hardcore supporters will watch for the results tonight. The place is just about empty right now. It holds 14,000, though, and they'll fill it up before the night is very old. After a strenuous 2 months of snuffing the nation, the only official item on Wallace's calendar today is what it's all about, voting. He drove 70 or so miles from Montgomery to Clayton, Alabama, to pull the lever for himself and for Curtis LeMay. Just about the whole town turned out to meet him, including cousins, aunts, his two brothers, his mother. In Alabama, the Democratic ticket under the rooster emblem is composed of George Wallace's electors, so George Wallace voted the straight Democratic ticket. The candidate's mood was a mellow one from the moment he hit town. He did speak of victory, but his emphasis was on what he thinks will be the effect of his third-party movement on the other party, or on whatever may be the upcoming administration after today's results are in. George Wallace thinks he has had an effect. He probably has, but his mood did not indicate today.
Oh, okay.
That effect
So
of a 4-year lease on the White House.
here's the most important information here on the left. That's all that really matters.
He talked more about what his party will do, how it will last. He will remain the spokesman and will continue to speak for it. Someone asked Governor Wallace, what are his plans after Election Day? He said he doesn't have any plans. He'll just play it by ear.
A message?
Wallace, he's been playing it by ear for the past 8 months with some pretty startling results. What will be
In my live stream?
This is Nelson Benton in Montgomery, now back to Walter Cronkite in New York.
Gentlemen, as you know, the Students for Democratic Society and the National Mobilization Committee to End the War in Vietnam, and the groups responsible for the demonstrations in Chicago, have threatened rather large-scale demonstrations throughout the day in the United States and tonight at the various candidates' headquarters. Today there were little dust-ups in Newark, New Jersey.
Thanks for joining the live stream.
Crossing the White House in Washington, hundreds arrested there. Some 50 demonstrators in Union Square in New York. It didn't really amount to very much. There were some at Waterville, Maine, 175 college students when the Democratic vice presidential candidate Edmund Muskie went there to cast his vote in his hometown. But I'm wondering if there is any indication of the demonstration around the candidate's headquarters tonight.
So there's,
outside the Waldorf,
yeah,
John?
there's someone in the live stream. Thank you.
I would imagine they would be waiting until about 9 o'clock Eastern time for the commission to arrive.
What about out there in Minneapolis, David Commission? David Commission? Right,
My only real experience
the Vice President has not
poker is from this app, and I originally downloaded the app in 2016, December. And
has come back from voting in Clayton, Alabama. I think he will be sequestered somewhere near this policy, and we don't know when we will see him. We're told that he will probably appear sometime during the evening, but there's no way of telling.
Besides the two major party candidates, of course, there is this third party candidate, George Wallace, from the. I'm told that Richard Nixon has just arrived at Newark Airport in Los Angeles. Bill Plant's there. Come in, Bill.
Walter Nixon and Mrs. Nixon and the two girls have just gotten off his airplane, the Patricia, after a 5-hour flight from the West Coast, waving to a small crowd which consists mainly of reporters here at Newark Airport, and getting in his limousine directly for the trip into New York City. The Nixon entourage, as usual, consists of his staff aides, a number of Secret Service people, and several hundred among the traveling press. Mr. Nixon's staff made it known that he didn't wish to stop and talk here, so they put him in the limousine, and the trip to New York City begins right now. And the long night ahead, I'm sure, is what's on his mind at this point. The Nixon motorcade will take the New Jersey Turnpike, probably to the Lincoln Tunnel into Manhattan. Mr. Nixon heading for the Waldorf and for his 35th floor suite, from which he'll watch the return on this night. There he goes. And the next glimpse we get of Richard Nixon tonight, Walter, will probably be when he comes downstairs to tell the American people that he has won or lost, as the case may be.
I'm far behind the curve of skill when it comes to card games, and very frequently I try to get a flush, and
Well, Bill's no better way to end the campaign than miss the bus. However, a couple of you lucky gentlemen are going to be catching other buses tonight, or tomorrow morning, or whenever the election is decided, and be off with the
betting half the pot there.
Go to their vacation retreats, and the word is finally come in that they have won the grueling campaign. With former Vice President Nixon, who arrived back in the New York area, and Curtis LeMay, I gather, on the way, or already in Montgomery.
The difference after waiting for many years, I was just going to say, I've never had an experience like that recently, of sort of being like a bull in a china shop, and not going in all in on every hand.
Almost 17,000 votes with 20% of the. Besides the two major parties and the third party making the greatest bid for votes this year of any third party in our recent history, not since Teddy Roosevelt's Bull Moose Progressives in 1912, as if been such an expensive run by a third party. We have a lot of other minor parties on the ballot in half of the states. There are a total of 9 other parties represented in one state or another. 3 of them of the old left, the communists, the socialist workers, the socialist labor, and 3 of them of the new left, the so-called Peace and Freedom Party, on the Freedom and Peace Party, and offshoot of that, and the New Party, so-called. 3 others are the Prohibition Party, the Constitution Party, and the Universal Party, which are represented on some ballots in some states. CBS News color coverage. Election night 68 will continue in a moment. Several states will provide barometers as to how the nation is going tonight, and let's take a look with our correspondents at where those states are. Mike Wallace?
Walter, there are three major states in the East whose electoral votes amount to 89, or one-third the sum total needed for election. New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania are those states, and just 2 weeks ago, according to all the polls, Nixon was comfortably ahead in all three. Then the old Democratic coalition went to work. In those states, labor organizations poured in money for advertising, radio, and television commercials. Their criticism centered on Nixon's choice of Spiro Agnew. Then the McCarthy people began to move over from apathy to Humphrey, and the polls began
When they're
to
talking about McCarthy, I don't know who they're talking about.
Pennsylvania,
Senator McCarthy, I don't know who that
He
is.
needs 2 of those 3 eastern states if he is to move west with any breathing room. And at this moment, there is no assurance that he's got them. The Republican leader in Pennsylvania says Pennsylvania is indeed the keystone state for Nixon.
Oh, okay, so 2, 3, 4, 5.
If Pennsylvania does go Democratic tonight, Nixon.
I have,
Let's find out
I'm
about
getting
the
a
Roger.
straight,
The state now to watch
I have
is
a,
Kentucky, which is a key state for Richard
I don't know
Nixon, Wallace
what
Perry's Kentucky.
percent chance, but pretty good percent chance.
Deeper than it is in Kentucky, and the whole election could be deadlocked. We have some early returns in from Kentucky. 5% of the popular vote is now in. Nixon leading by about 4,000.
I don't know if being more cautious is right to do because I'm well below whatever I have invested so far. I've invested 20K at least, or I think I've already invested 30K, and this is,
It's interesting to note, Walter, that in the rural areas of western
I don't
Tennessee,
know.
which is heavy Wallace country, Humphrey is a point or two ahead.
odds of an ace or a
Dan
6.
Wallace over the west. Walter, Ohio is the state we'll be watching the hardest, earliest.
That-
It has amassed 26 electoral votes.
that,
and the system note the
that
Nixon
pot
staff
huge,
sent,
though.
Their candidate this word: if Humphrey wins Ohio, he probably will win the country.
Oh, whoa, whoa,
He has
whoa.
never won the nation without Ohio. Richard Nixon tried to carry Ohio, but he acknowledged that Humphrey had a heavy charge going in the
Yeah,
last few days,
I'm just
and so no state is more important in the Midwest, and possibly none in the country more
absolutely,
important than Ohio. Polls close in Ohio
going to
in about 7
win,
minutes.
so-
Illinois, of course, also has 26 electoral votes, and that's a state that Richard Nixon felt that he might have won the 1960 election had he been able to carry.
So that-
We have some
that
polls
more
in
than-
Kansas, 3% of the vote in most of these rural areas. Nixon leads
That more than-
Wallace is running third.
I don't know if that,
Joseph Betty, when we come
okay,
back,
so
in
that
a short while, we'll get
was
a
all-
report
all right,
from
I
the West.
suppose.
Quite a while to get some actual returns. It's Watercon Guide to CBS News election. CBS News coverage of election night.
I'm just trying to calculate how much.
Correspondent Walter Cronkite.
So I've spent, I've invested 30K, and now I have 30K. I don't know.
Richard Nixon has gone just over the 100,000 mark at 45% of the vote. Humphrey 76,000 at 35%, and Wallace 20% for 43,582, as you see there. Polls have closed only now, and they just are closing at this moment in North Carolina.
I don't have
and Ohio.
any,
They have closed in Alabama, Kentucky, and
anything
Tennessee.
in there?
Everywhere else, the polls are open, and this will time for most of America to vote. Advance indications are that we are turning out in record.
Two pair. I'm definitely not about to go in an all-in,
I think that
whatever it's called.
Well. Joe Benny can tell us about it, Joe.
but I'll go 3, almost 3K.
And that's the key state to watch. Not so much indicating any trends in that region. I think it's simply because Humphrey and Nixon are going to be watching. The last major poll taken in the state showed that they come within 1 percentage point of each other. Nixon in the lead. And in California, that means 40 electoral votes, which is almost half of the 95 electoral votes.
I just remember like a few years ago being able to bluff my way like
nearly all of those 95 electoral votes, which would be a third.
crazy. I mean, I would just go into a room and just clean up.
Notice here, Joe, that San Francisco.
I guess I got bored with that after
They were running way ahead in 1964.
with blackjack, going up, trying to screw the dealer with martingale betting strategy and stuff like that. So here I want to go for the flush again, but I'm not going to because there is no chance. It's impossible now, but I'll definitely, whatever. Just the way that I learned how to play is, it's almost like I got too good and I had the beginner's luck or something, and it was just, someone said, if you always want to be trying to bluff every single hand, and you know, always based on what is the pot at. If the pot's 10K, then bet 2/3 of it. And I haven't really seen anyone play the way that I do, but and that's not very cautiously, but I'm becoming more cautious now.
National history, and they're no longer going to have campaigns of high excitement with great masses of people. We may play a lot cooler from now on. It never did seem reasonable that with all the perturbation in the country amongst many people about all these problems, that people wouldn't vote. That's one thing they could do.
I have seen
Of course, this is the one day about
a whole lot of people that play in a similar way, but just going all in. Like I never, almost never go all in. I'm never the first to go all in, like right away. But I definitely will try to raise the pot up to like 1K bets, just to start it off, something like that.
the Nixon side, if he wins, he's got to try to create a new center coalition, all Republican, different kinds of people, that the makeup of the population change, and he could not govern in the old way, the old Republican philosophy, rather cast as president, congressional supremacy, great reliance on private enterprise, and so on. That's probably all finished. Maybe the polls, the opinion polls may be finished, though I very much doubt it. This passion of people to know what the future is going to be before the future comes is a very old-fashioned. Goes back at least to the Delphic Oracle. She was wrong sometimes too.
We finally have broken into the percentage column of national popular vote with 1%.
I think the last time I got lucky, I haven't got lucky with one pair, and
CBS News color coverage, election night 68.
that is at least the attitude that until now, until that guy just bet 17K, I'm not about to, if two other people are already doing that, no way. Maybe if it was just me and that guy. But, that guest, I should say, is the name. That going to be an interesting hand, how that plays out. 60,000 chips. Oh, what did he have? He won with a pair? He won with a pair. And I had a pair of, I don't know if it was above 7 or not. So here we go now. They're raising they're up in the ante to 10K, just right from nothing. That seems to happen a lot. As soon as I start trying to raise the ante, other people go a lot bigger than that. With a 3 and a 9, nah. Nothing. Maybe if I had pocket aces or pocket kings or something.
The staff people are somewhat worried about victory. From one exhausted staff member to the other, you realize that if we win, we'll be flying to Waverly, Minnesota tomorrow. CBS News correspondent Ike Pappas is with General.
So he was going for the flush because he had the 2 spades. Okay, so with a pocket pair, I'll definitely go with the 1K bet.
He will proceed to an area near the Coliseum and then await his turn to come on stage with his running mate, George Wallace. Not very many people have arrived here yet. It will, of course, become more and more filled through the night, and by the time the returns are complete, there should be some 15,000 people here. General LeMay voted with his wife in Bel Air, California earlier today. He met with some friends immediately after that. He went to the airport.
He went back to the aeroplane. Didn't have time to take a slow train. Just one pair. Yeah, I'll just go ahead and bet half of it. And take a swing and then see if anyone folds. There's one fold. I would say they're probably both going to bet or call. They're probably both going to call. I just look, you can see if their cards are, oh, there's 3. So one more fold and then 2 more calls. So now I've got a pair, and now am I bluffing or what? So I'm just going to go ahead and check, and then they're probably going to raise. I called my bluff. So yeah, 2 pairs, so... probably one of those guys is going to go all in, and
very few of the polls closed. In Alabama, where some of the polling places have closed, Nixon has a 1 vote.
800, that's fine. Yeah, we're all bluffing here. Okay, so 5K. I don't see a straight. I do see a 3 of a kind or a 2 pair. Full house, I didn't expect that. Alright, so I think naturally, like after losing in losing mode, people start betting more aggressively, and I don't really change. I'm just consistent for the most part. 2K, that's fine.
Here at our CBS News election headquarters, where the guns counted the vote. Big election of 1960.
5K. Yeah, I mean,
the third party has had an important influence on.
At this point in the hand, before the cards are even dealt, then wow. So I have, if there's one more club, then I'm not trying to raise the pot any more than it is. It's at 35K right now. Yeah, they're starting a mode over there, so I'll do that
The first votes will be on the boards in the studio. They represent each state, and that state's voting for
I wonder if
president,
they're going to be another
This is the
club.
vote. The vote as it's actually being counted.
I don't think I've seen any
States.
flushes since I've been live streaming, so
Two other networks, and
I have
the
seen
press,
3
United
flushes in a row on 3 different hands.
What's called the News Election Service, NES. NES has placed 125
Am I willing to bet
across the United States.
the rest of my bank that I'll get a flush?
Except for Cook County, Illinois, where it's all
I suppose.
reporters in there. The NES system operates this way. The votes are called in from precincts to regional centers in Dallas, Atlanta, New York, St. Louis, Philadelphia, Cincinnati, and Los Angeles. Computers then transmit that collected vote to New York. Here, they'll be tallied to be released at the same time to all of those organizations which I told you are a part of NES. Now, this is faster than the old-fashioned way, and it avoids much of the confusion of the past when one organization will be reporting one set of votes and another organization reporting just the opposite set. Still, that raw vote count is relatively slow and gives us the impression that some kind of a race is going on. And in fact,
Ooh!
so in effort, we focus in more clearly on the real polls. How those already cast votes are falling into
80K.
place.
Alright, so at this point, if I triple my money, then so I'm gonna now I'm trying to work back down to 100 to 20% earnings. So if I've invested, how much did I invest? I invested 30K. So I'm trying to leave with 40K or something like that. So I gotta bet another half, and now the problem is now that I care less and I'm trying to lose money, I'm probably going to end up winning money. So I'm just experimenting here because I've never tried to leave with only 20% winnings. I always get like, it's just an unlimited amount. I mean, I never go down.
Candidate is leading in a particular state, and he is trailing, whether or not it's simply too close to call, or who has won, who has lost. These estimates are not mysterious. In fact, they are just a shorthand system.
Just because I can't imagine playing in person like this and just like trying to be friendly with people when I'm just robbing them blind. 55K, did I just do that? Oh, I just did that. I just gave away everything that I won.
Incidentally, besides all of the computers, the tabulators, and hundreds of people working behind the scenes here, that which is seen on the screen apparently has already created some telephone calls around the country. We've had a number of calls.
He's probably got a 3 of a kind or...
What the green bubbles are back there, as you can see in this wide shot of our studio. Well, ironic as it may seem, those green bubbles are there so you won't see them. They're there to be unobtrusive. Our cameramen and cameras are behind those green bubbles, and if we figured that if they were moving around all evening swinging those cameras, we might not be able to concentrate on what Dan Rather and Mike Wallace and Eric Severide...
That one really hurts too because I had the same pair, really just barely less.
Well, just for sitting around here, this round hole, well, I'll tell you what that is. That's our great big wastebasket in the sky. It's nothing. We had to sit around something, so we're sitting around a hole. Actually, I can look down in that hole and I can see a bunch of boards which tell me what's going on around the country and the Senate House, its governorship, and the national election votes. Now, with that 1% of the vote still at 1%, but moving up toward 2, we have Nixon's percentage at 44, Humphrey's at 36, and Wallace is holding at 19. Reminding you again that this comes from...
I should probably cool it here, but
some precincts that have closed in Alabama,
I'm not going to.
And in Kansas, and perhaps a few votes from North Carolina and Ohio, where precincts have closed now, the voting places.
The odds of me getting a flush right now
the
are
polling places will close
so
in quite a batch of
low.
states, 8 more, Georgia, Illinois, Kentucky, South Carolina, Vermont, and Virginia, and some will close in Florida and Indiana also at that time. At that time, we'll have enough states have closed at that time for 20% of the electoral vote, a total of 109 electoral votes, and we'll begin getting our estimates shortly after they close. But meanwhile, there's still plenty of time for most of America to get out and vote. CBS News color coverage of election night 68 will continue in a moment. CBS News coverage of election night 68. Reporting from election headquarters, Walter Cronkite. Reasonably good weather over most of the nation. Apparently, America turned out in...
If I went all in, there's no way that I can get 3 people to fold, I don't think.
Senate, all the members of the House, and some governors. 1% of the vote has been counted now, and Nixon leads with 44%, Humphrey 37%, and Wallace 19% of the vote. Polls are still open in most of the nation. Part of the polling places in Alabama, Kentucky, and Tennessee have closed. All of them have closed in North Carolina and Ohio. And at this hour, 7 o'clock Eastern Time, 6 other states...
Here I go for the flush again.
Illinois, Kentucky, South Carolina, Vermont, and
About
Virginia.
2K.
Elsewhere in the United States, of course, the polls are still open and will be open for some time in the Middle West, in many places in the South, and particularly in the western states. Roger Mudd has a report for us now on where most of our votes have been coming from, the South. Roger?
Walter, the significance of these Kentucky returns really cannot be overestimated. George Wallace is running a very poor race in Kentucky.
I should probably fold.
Before Kentucky voted, was expected to be a strong state, although not expected to win. But with half of the popular vote in, George Wallace is running a very poor third.
Just 2 other people.
Not break out of the deep South and into the border states. Possibly that his electoral vote will not...
No way did I just hit 2 flushes in a row. So I made all my money back.
Shows
Oh, yeah, 3 of a kind.
all these model precincts are in. The final vote is counted. Mr. Nixon will carry Kentucky 44%. It's interesting to take a look just at where these votes are coming from for Mr. Nixon. He is trailing Louisville, but not by much.
Why did he
is
get
breaking
some
even
of that
in the
money
suburbs, But in the low-income and blue-collar areas in Kentucky, George Wallace is running a bad third group, and George Wallace carrying and Nixon carrying low-income and Hubert
Why
Humphrey
can I
carrying
not
blue-collar,
press the
and in
button?
both cases, George Wallace doing badly. Now in
Go,
Tennessee,
go,
which
go.
is our second state with a heavy reporting,
Something wrong with
17%
the-
of the vote is in. Nixon leading there, Humphrey, Wallace in second place. Humphrey in a bad third. That was a toss-up state. 17% of the vote in. The indications are that Wallace is doing well in the
It's
high
hard to
Democratic
believe
voting areas
that
and fairly well in the blue-collar areas.
flushes are less common than straights and three of a kind. I feel like
the Republican candidate,
because I'm so focused on flushes that they just happen more often, but I don't
That seat
know.
is Houston Morton, seat who is retiring. The high Democratic area shows 32% of normally Democratic voters tonight are voting for the Republican candidate, Marlowe Cook. Waller?
Roger, what you said about Wallace.
And here, I mean, here's 3 spades up there. Odds that someone has 2 spades are pretty. I could pretend. No.
But we have a special CBS
Should I?
No. We
No.
have people at the polling places in many parts of the state just asking voters how they voted, and they all tell us. When they do, we can get some idea of how
5K on a. That no. No.
North Carolina either. But Nixon is running in that survey.
That's the first hand that I've actually folded on when I've raised the ante.
So maybe there's a shaking here of some disappointment for Wallace May and the American Independent Party. CBS News color coverage of election night 68 will continue in a moment.
Intermission.
We're moving up toward 2% of the national popular vote in, but it's still officially reported down at the 1% level. That's only scattered precincts around the country. As you see, less than a quarter of a million votes in so far. There hasn't been any change in that.
See? 3 flushes in 4 hands. It's unbelievable how common it happens.
What the late polls indicate is going to be a very close presidential race.
And now here I have 2 clubs, and I'm going for 4 flushes in a row. It just doesn't seem like that works. I guess it does.
The man who is watching these returns tonight very carefully is the President of the United States, who chose not to run this year in the hopes that his gesture would bring a Vietnam peace.
LBJ, they're talking about LBJ.
Texas, not far from his ranch. Robert Pierpoint, the CBS News White House correspondent, has been in Austin, Texas with the presidential party. Bob, come in and tell us about the president's
I have bluffed people out with nothing, not even anything, not even a pair or a high card, and that's some sort of award for doing that. I'm not playing here with this. With a pair of 3s? $2,000? I didn't press a button. I think I got timed out on a. That happened a couple nights ago. I was on the phone and I was in the middle of saying something and I didn't press a button and I lost like 100K or something.
Instead, if he has anything to say at all, the White House press office has told us here in San Antonio that they will issue the statement.
Am I feeling lucky? Lucky about 1.2K. I don't even have to look. I can hear if someone places a bet or not. Am I feeling 20K lucky? No.
Bob, it's nerve-wracking for you, but it's also nerve-wracking for us. We don't even know where you are. Try to keep in touch with the office.
Oh no! Wait, yeah. Oh man. Well, nice hand.
Nationally, at least a few of these sample precincts of ours,
I'll put
suburbs and small towns.
me right here.
Well ahead in both of those areas where he was indeed expected to run strong in suburbs and smaller towns. But his percentage of vote doesn't seem to be as high as it might be in those areas. 54% in the suburbs, 51% of the small towns. In the suburbs is 37%, and the small towns is 29%.
What am I looking at here?
We're hoping for a large vote, particularly in the small town areas. He's only getting 19%
Check.
of the vote there. He's getting 9% of the
A
vote.
$200 pot? It's not even worth playing with a 200 chip pot.
Getting 65% of the vote in the so-called high Republican areas, but that's 1 percentage point below the 1964 base. Of course, this is still on the basis of very early sample precincts. Dan Rather, could you give us a report on that Western vote?
3.
Yes, Walter.
What are we even doing here? Yeah, now it's 2K.
And the indication is that we may have a real cliffhanger going in Ohio.
We just folded on that. I don't know what we're looking at here. So if it's at 4K, then I'll triple the pot. Just no. Should I? 8K? I'll double it. And I'll lose. I just lost.
Now, the CBS News estimate in Ohio, we have about a third of our sample precincts in. so-called model precincts in Ohio. And this indicates that
So right
no
now,
trend in Ohio as yet. It's just, although we're getting a good number in,
if I have
just
35, then
that it's so close in Ohio, we just simply can't make any kind of call in any direction. And that's what leads us to believe that Ohio may go right down to the last actual vote tabulated.
I'm just trying to have a 20% winning,
The
and
important point to remember is that as of this moment, it does appear in the presidential race that Ohio is going to be very close indeed. Now, the same thing, or perhaps even more so,
I'm
holds
going
true in that
for a
the
flush
19
again.
in Ohio. Again, with some of the tabulated votes, vote counted, William Saxby, the Republican, moderate Republican, leading John Gilligan, the McCarthy-Kennedy-style Democrat, in the race for Frank Launce's old Senate seat in Ohio. Again, with just over a third of the CBS News sample precincts in, CBS News estimates that this
oh, it's going to be a long night. Okay, so I got 3 flushes. I've tried for 3 flushes, and now I got a full house, even better. So someone else took that? No way. I don't know how someone else took that. That's unbelievable. I was going to raise the pod, but they did. Alright, 3 of a kind. Someone's going down here. I'm not going to go all in because I don't want to make them lose their confidence. So as far as confidence goes, I'm only going to bet another 1K so that nobody folds. And you see nobody folded. So now if they're going to want to see that next card, they're going to have to see half the pot. They're going to have to bet half the pot. Did I just press the wrong button? Okay, so he raised me again. Yeah, I pressed the wrong button, but I'm going to raise it even more. So they're doing what I want them to do. They're raising it for me. I have a 3 of a kind, so I'm going to take that. It's mine. I can only raise it another 2K. Oh well. He just raised it 30K.
Eric, how does this comparatively low Wallace vote strike you? At least in Kentucky, nationally, the percentage is holding up about what had been predicted, maybe a little higher, but in Kentucky it was much lower.
Oh, they both had straights. That one hit me.
Combined with those signs our reporters are picking up outside the polling places in North Carolina, at least
That one felt like someone hit me in there.
It would incline one to think that perhaps this is not going to be a hung jury elected, and this will probably not win the House of Representatives, but of course, too early to be sure.
Man, so now I've invested
In this direction.
50.
Wallace third party will probably run below the other 2 big third parties of the century, the Pollock in 24 and Teddy Roosevelt in 1912. Wallace, of course, having the first right wing big third party. And one would be inclined to think on the basis of these very fragmentary returns, of course, that perhaps Mr. Nixon's border and so-called New South strategy.
Did I just say I've invested 50K and it just showed 50K as the pot? That's
Roger, what's the latest in the South?
Well, the latest is that Kentucky call, Walter, and it's, as Eric has said, you've mentioned, I've mentioned that the significance of Kentucky for Richard Nixon and for George Wallace really cannot be overestimated. And apparently the clue to Nixon's victory in Kentucky was a very strong Republican administration in Frankfort, headed by Governor Louis Nunn. And if you're familiar with Kentucky politics, you know that the governor of that state also controls the State Roads Commission, and in about 12 districts in the state, he's got political appointees, and each political appointee has about 800 men who work for him.
and that was a 3 of a kind, so that was what I was trying to do last time. That's what you get when you win 4 flushes in a row like I did.
We reported earlier that even among blue-collar and low-income voters in Kentucky, Wallace did very badly, less than 20% of the vote. And Nixon held his own in what normally is regarded as strong Democratic area.
1K raise. I don't know. If people don't know me that at the table, if they don't know me as the guy who ups the ante to 10, is it 10 times? 10 times the ante? No matter what, basically, on every hand, then I don't know. There's okay. Now they raise it another 10 times, but that's I'm okay with it. Oh, okay. So now another. Now it's doubled. But this is rough. There's no way.
Nixon 23%, Humphrey 21%.
Oh boy.
Among Georgia Negroes, 97% are sample percentage show the Negro.
I've got nothing, and I'm all in. So.
And finally, in Tennessee, with about 25% of the popular vote in, Nixon is still maintaining.
So I'm not losing. I'm just like raising my investment. And it'd be different if I was playing with not an unlimited amount of people, but there's an unlimited amount of people here.
Let's remind everyone that by means of an early analysis of the vote, we will be, through the night, making estimates of the outcome of various races. And some of those estimates will come while the polls in certain parts of the country are still open. But this does not mean that if the votes in
I'll
those
sit out for a second. Unless I click that auto rebuy button.
Will be crucial to the national outcome, and certainly will be to the state votes. All the propositions that are on state ballots, as well as the state legislatures, 43 of the states are voting for those.
Long term, I'm
So far,
doing that.
closed their polling places. 42 states are still open.
I'm still on the 20% thing because my biggest win was 6 million chips. So if I have 2 million chips right now, that's over 20%. That's 33%. So 20% of 6 million is, I don't know, but it's like 1.5 million. So I have like 300,000 to just play with.
News coverage of election night 68 continues. Reporting from election
So
headquarters.
I'm actually like playing poker rather than
more than 2% of the nation's precincts
not.
counted now in the popular vote. Richard Nixon is still
Like there's no emotional attachment because like I'm like trying to get 20% of my winnings when they were 6 million.
Here at CBS News, we estimate now on the basis of our sample precincts in the state of Kentucky that
So it looks like I'm losing, but I'm
now we
not.
can estimate that in Alabama, as expected, George Wallace will win that state. He will get no less than 62% and perhaps as high as 70% of the vote in his native state, as expected. That puts Wallace in the early hours of what may be a very long night into an early lead for the electoral vote. And of course, that's the name of the game. Wallace has his 10 electoral votes now, according to our CBS News estimate, from Alabama. Nixon has his 9 electoral votes from Kentucky. Nixon also is leading, according to our CBS News estimate, for the 14 electoral votes of Florida, and Wallace is leading for the 12 electoral votes of Georgia. Now, it takes 270 electoral votes to win. Of course, when the Electoral College meets, the electors each in their separate state capitals on December the 16th. 270 electoral votes being
7,000. Yeah, I'm just playing for fun. I mean, it's all for fun anyways because it's not real money. It never has been.
Then the matter goes to the House of Representatives, the new House, when it meets on next January.
And that's where my beginner's luck came from, is because I would always be trying to bluff people out of their winnings.
Now for a look at the returns and
And it worked.
historic implications, such as perhaps you can read them at 7:30 in the evening, Eric, along with one of our favorite analysts of election returns and the making of presidents.
Thank you, Walter. My old sidekick Theodore White is here with me again. He was in the convention this summer. The author making the president.
Yeah, why not?
This is the third book. Good one out. You going to get a real book out of this one? I don't know.
Going all in.
Not really can tell. You know, we were just talking about what meaning there may be in these returns with Alabama, of course, called the Wallace Kentucky for election. And I'm talking about the size of the Wallace vote in Kentucky, which is a kind of a critical state here. Do you believe the same way I do that this state implications have mentioned? Yes, I do.
So I just spun my wheels for, I don't know, something like 5 minutes to get back to the same. Was that the same? Maybe that wasn't the same. Oh well.
And possibly North Carolina also. We get to see Humphrey's troops show up. So in other words, then you think what Nixon did at the convention, which became so contentious, especially his choice of vice presidential
bet
candidate,
97?
It's too early to say yet. It may work out just as Kennedy's choice of Johnson paid off.
I feel like a couple of days ago, we were going all in, like, on every hand, and it was pretty fun.
I'd say the whole Wallace thing is crumbling right now. There's this terminal terror on the
It's pretty fun to just go all in on every hand.
If it works this way up north, we're going to see a long, long night as it works for Humphrey in the north as it is for Nixon in the south. You know, I was reading a quotation from one of the best political scientists in this country, Professor Rossiter, about third parties. Said they have a place in our tradition, but it's a special one. They serve as an outlet for dissent and symbols of our want of tolerance. But they forget their place and invite our righteous intolerance when they thrust themselves forcefully into the struggle for power. Maybe we're seeing that again. And we'll see more of it the next 4 years. There are all sorts of alien shapes floating around in our politics right now. But you're not willing to say yet that we have basically moved from a two-party to a three-party country. Every indication tonight indicates no. We're still staying with it. More things change, the more the others stand. That's right. Well, I kind of like it that way, Eric, myself. Thank you, Walter.
We have a surprise from Indiana with some of our sample precincts in. CBS News estimates now that Hubert Humphrey is leading for that solidly Republican state of Indiana, with perhaps getting 51% of the vote, Nixon 40% and Wallace 9% in Indiana, a state where Wallace did well in his 1964 bid in the primaries. CBS News color coverage of Election Night 68 will continue in a moment. In the popular vote, with very few of the nation's precincts counted, most of the polling places still open. Richard Nixon is still holding 43 and Humphrey 35, but Wallace has come up 1 percentage point to 22 percentage points now. We have that interesting race in Indiana. Let's hear more about it, Dan Rather.
Walter, generally, it's shaping up as possibly a tight night in the Midwest. We're now getting substantial CBS
Ooh, with a high card.
in both Ohio and Indiana, and a few in Illinois. And we're still unable to spot any trend in Indiana or Ohio. And in Illinois, let's take it from the top. In Indiana, where we're just getting the very first of the so-called raw vote, the actual vote tabulated in Indiana shows Richard Nixon leading, Hubert Humphrey second, George Wallace
I still
running
have
now, our CBS
200-300K to
a substantial number
burn
of
through.
Now, and it indicates, with 31% of our sample precincts in Indiana, that Hubert Humphrey may be leading Richard Nixon in Indiana. This is a shocking surprise if it turns out this way, with George Wallace running third. And Wallace in Indiana, on the basis of our sample precincts, is not doing nearly as well as has been forecast.
I'm sitting out right now. I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to try to burn through, so I think that's about 100K that I've invested just on this live stream.
No figures available yet in the actual vote tabulation, but with some of our CBS News sample precincts in from the state of Illinois in the presidential race, indicating that it's going to be close. between the Democrats and Republicans in the state of Illinois. Now, Illinois, as was the case in Indiana, was a state that before the polls closed was put by the Nixon people, and for that matter by the Humphrey people, was probably in the safe column for Richard Nixon. Now again, we have a substantial number, not nearly all of our sample precincts in, but on the basis of what we do have in, it indicates that the race for the presidency and the 26 electoral votes in Illinois may indeed turn out to be very close. We'll be coming back to all of those for you, of course. In Ohio, some of the vote tabulation in there now.
So I guess the idea is
tabulated in Ohio,
having pride in my work
now, our
and
CBS News estimate in the state of Ohio, and we're getting,
valuing my time and my work as 20% of whatever I invest,
now, jumping back to Indiana for just a moment, because there's an interesting senatorial race there.
rather than thinking that like I would be able to get a credit card with unlimited funds and free interest.
That is going to be the case. The prize seems to be running much stronger than Hubert Humphrey in Indiana, and on the basis of the early returns in our own sample precincts, may win that race over Republican Ruckelshaus. But also the big story in the Midwest at the moment is that while Richard Nixon, on the basis of early returns in our sample precincts, seems to be doing very well in the border states over in Roger Mudd's area, that in the Midwest there are some gradual indications that Nixon, there may be some hairline cracks in his support in the Midwest.
That was supposed to be solid Nixon country, I bet. And Roger, I think you've got an interesting call from Florida for us.
Yes, sir, Walter. The CBS News estimates now show that Richard Nixon will carry the state of Florida. You can see on the little map behind me that Florida and Kentucky are now forming up to box George Wallace into the Deep South. Our CBS News estimate shows that when the poll votes are cast and counted in Florida, Nixon will carry the state of Florida 43% to Hubert Humphrey's 32%, George Wallace 25%. Florida always was considered by the Wallace campaign staff one of their best states. It didn't prove to be that way this evening. A quick look at the Florida popular vote shows with 4% of the vote.
Who's George Wallace? I think George Wallace was the only person who I had heard of in this election.
Model precincts indicate that Wallace made his best showing in the northern panhandle part of Florida. 51% of the vote there.
I'm trying to think if I can even remember who George Wallace is.
And Palm Beach, rather. Nixon, 54% and 51%. In the Florida Senate race, two competitors for the retiring seat of George Mathers, Ed Gurney, Congressman Ed Gurney, now leading the former governor of Florida, Leroy Collins, by about 5,000 votes. In the North Carolina presidential race,
oh, a pair of
2%
threes.
of the vote in.
This is not good.
Really, that's a three-way toss-up. Nixon and Wallace running at about 8,000, Humphrey with 6,000. In the Tennessee presidential race, 32% of the vote in. Nixon in Tennessee maintaining his lead over George Wallace, now running second. And finally,
Oh, did I press the fold button on
estimated to go to
accident?
George Wallace. Wallace 31,000, Humphrey 13,000, Nixon 11,000. So summing up, Walter, with three states in the South now estimated an eventual winner. Nixon has taken two of them, Kentucky and Florida, and Wallace is holding his home ground of Alabama.
In those all-important electoral votes, that gives, according to our CBS News estimate, Nixon 23 and Wallace 10 electoral votes so far in this very early count.
Oh, I was just thinking about flushes. I was just thinking of what I was saying. I said that's what you get when you get three flushes in a row. And here I go for my fourth flush. Go ahead and bet it. Oh, they've been raising it up here over here for me though.
It's been believed that Wallace would make deeper inroads in that on Humphrey in the heavy Democratic areas, particularly in the laboring districts. In the Republican, high Republican areas.
Oh, come on, now they're not raising it?
And Wallace is getting 18% of the vote.
2.5K then?
So far, of our sample precincts. But they would indicate at the moment that Wallace perhaps is hurting Nixon more than he is hurting Humphrey tonight. And still, Wallace in the national returns, as you see here with 3% of the vote counted so far, has 22% of the vote. He's been holding on to that margin here for the last half hour or so. That these percentages have not changed. CBS News color coverage of election night 68 will continue in a moment. And our popular vote, with 3% of the vote in, Humphrey a little over 500,000 votes for 35%
No flush
of the national
then.
vote. Nixon 43% for 634,000, and Wallace 22% for
If he
327,000. That's only comparatively few.
checks, then
most of the polls are still open, although
I
many
might
close in
bluff.
another 15 minutes.
So he's gonna bluff,
By
and then so I'm gonna
time,
fold.
Almost half of the nation's states will have closed their polls. We now have Richard Nixon, the Republican candidate, according to our CBS News estimate, the likely winner in Kentucky and in Florida for 23 electoral votes. Wallace, the likely winner in Alabama for 10 electoral votes. We have Wallace now with a fairly substantial lead in Mississippi, and Hubert Humphrey with a fairly substantial lead, according to our CBS News estimate, in Vermont. John Hart is at Nixon's headquarters here in New York, in the Waldorf Astoria Hotel, for a report on Mr. Nixon's day. John?
Well, we have two sources for this report. The first one from Ron Ziegler, who is Mr. Nixon's traveling press secretary, and we'll give him equal time with the press reporter who was aboard that airplane. The only one
As far as Martingale goes, that I haven't won a hand in so long that the odds of me winning some random hand with not a 9 and a 2 random are getting they're definitely, you know what I mean, odds of winning are increasing.
Mr. Ziegler reports that Richard Nixon will not hold a news conference this evening, whatever the outcome, nor tomorrow, whatever the outcome. Walter?
Well, it's going to be awfully hard, I should think, John, for him to resist having a news conference if he wins, but this gives him a position behind which he can retreat if he doesn't win, I suppose. On the other hand, Edwin Muskie, the Democratic vice presidential candidate, has announced that around 9 o'clock he'll appear at his headquarters in Waterville, Maine, and we do not know what Hubert Humphrey's specific plans are for an appearance there. Linda Johnson is
going all in then.
Appear at all tonight at the ranch, as we heard
I
earlier.
saw that pair and I got
well,
excited.
Story here out of Doylestown, Pennsylvania, which might be called a sidebar on this election. It turns out that if you wanted to vote for George Wallace in Doylestown, Pennsylvania,
normally I have the endurance, like, I'm holding the phone, and because I'm streaming, it's a bit different. Like, I have patience because I'm talking. Usually I'm not saying anything, and I'm even entertained without listening to anything on YouTube, for example. Like this, and that is uncomfortable because, like, I'm gonna turn the camera off for a second. 44 minutes. No way.
Let's take a look now at the key Senate races. 34 senators are up this year, and the balance between the Democrats and the Republicans of seats up is such that it's highly unlikely that the Republicans could win control of the Senate, virtually impossible as a matter of fact, but there are some key races that the nation will be watching. And let's take a look at those now, starting first with Mike Wallace in the East.
And let's start first with Senator Abraham Ribicoff against Edmund May, Walter, in the state of Connecticut. Incidentally, the Connecticut polls don't close for another 10 minutes. They used to close at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, but they didn't like their returns being projected across the country and people making up their minds how to vote on the basis of the way the Connecticut returns went. So they moved their poll ending time to 8 o'clock. In any case, Abe Ribicoff has come, I suppose you might say, from slightly behind to well ahead. He's expected to be returned to the Senate from the state of Connecticut. In New York, there is a three-way race. Paul O'Dwyer, the incumbent Senator Jacob Javits, and James Buckley. James Buckley is the brother of William Buckley, publisher, editor of the National Review magazine, conservative candidate. Jacob Javits, the veteran Republican senator. And Paul O'Dwyer is a kind of maverick Democrat. He was one of the two senators in the country, senatorial candidates in the country, that is, who, on the Democratic side, who was reluctant to...
I have invested at least 100K, so I have to win 100.
In the state of Pennsylvania, there's a very tough race. Senator Joseph Clark, veteran Republican senator, against
I have to have 150,000 over here.
Of the Conservative Party, and that one is going to go right down.
It's going to take a minute. If it's taking 44 minutes, then I would say by hour's time, then
which is a very heavy vote in the state of Pennsylvania, and it's conceivable that unless the Negro
I'll have like 50K.
that could give him trouble too. And finally, one senator in the East elected, George Aiken of Vermont, unopposed. And incidentally, his campaign expenditures, Walter, I believe, are the smallest in the nation. He spent $18.09 in his primary campaign. And of course, he hasn't had to spend a penny because he's unopposed in the actual campaign.
It's very hard to pad the expense account. You don't have an opponent.
So, not going to have a straight. Actually, I don't know. The odds of getting a straight are pretty good right now.
Hello there again.
Unless I'm mistaken.
Now, the national popular vote, they've just gone to 4% of the nation's precincts in. That's a very small sample so far. But the figures are holding about the same as they have been all evening.
What are my odds of getting a straight? Jack, 10,
900,000 votes,
98, no,
21,000, and Wallace 23% with the 494,000 votes. We have been able, on the basis of our sample precincts here at CBS News, to estimate that Nixon will win Kentucky and Florida for a total of 23 electoral votes of the 270 he will need. Wallace, Alabama, his home state, is expected to
adapt my play style here. But this room, though, in this room, everybody's betting so huge.
It already closed in 9 states, but these 16, the polls will have closed in half of the states across the nation. States that have a total of 57% of the electoral vote, or 307 electoral votes. Of course, if one candidate another, that all of those first states have closed, he'd already be above the 270 needs. But it's not likely to work that way, as we already know. Perhaps I said something wrong here. I'm getting a note that says Humphrey, that is one no states. I thought that's what I said. Perhaps I said something else. At any rate, half of the states have now closed their polls. Those are the states in Alabama, Connecticut, Delaware, District of Columbia, Florida, Indiana, Maryland, Massachusetts.
It really seems like everybody's getting some really lucky hands, and I'm not getting anything. And I would never say that out loud because it sounds so almost paranoid, but I got the proof here, the video proof that it's happening, because I've been betting on every hand almost. And even when I fold, it would show me if I got lucky. Even when I fold, it would show me that. But I haven't even when I've been folding.
401,000, almost 402, Miss Peden 381,000. Alabama, the race for Lister Hill seat. Jim Allen, who was lieutenant governor under George Wallace, with 11% of the vote in, is out to obviously an early and sizable lead. His Republican opponent, Barry Hooper, is
not looking good. Someone's going to try to bluff right now.
And Robert Swin, the independent. And finally, in Florida, for the seat of retiring George Smathers, Republican Congressman Ed Gurney of Winter Park, leading the former governor of Florida, Leroy Collins, by about
with a pair of
10,000
twos.
votes. The indications are that
I mean, that's worth
a tough time beating Gurney. He served as an intellectual troubleshooter for about a year. Apparently, in Florida, has never been able to live down that brief experience. Walter? Let's hear from some of the Senate races in the Middle West now. The Middle West man, Dan Rather. Walter, in Ohio, more than half of our CBS model precincts are in, and that Gilligan-Saxby race for Senate remains a sweeper. First, let's take a look at the actual tabulated vote. We have about 7% of the vote counted in Ohio in the race between Republican William Saxby, a strong Nixon supporter, but who differed with the Vice President somewhat on Mr. Nixon's views in the war. Saxby, the Republican, against John Gilligan, the rebel Democrat and one-time supporter of Senator Eugene McCarthy, who continued his dovish stand in the war throughout the race. In the actual vote tabulated, 7% of the vote counted. Saxby leads Gilligan. It looks close, as it was expected to be. On the basis of our CBS News estimates, with a rather substantial number of our sample precincts in, but not anywhere close to...
Isn't this just beginner's luck? I've never, since I've been playing the last few days, never ended like on a bad, without winning, I think. That's just what it seems like. But,
Senator Birch Bayh, about whom President Johnson once said that he is a possible future presidential contender by failing in that race. In the actual vote tabulation, I'll remind you that only 8% of the vote is in.
I think I'm going to go to a larger room with a larger, whatever, higher stakes.
Counted in Kansas. Some of the polls closed early there. Bob Dole, the veteran conservative Republican congressman, with an early lead over William Robinson, the Wichita attorney. That is for the seat formerly held by Frank Carlson, who was retiring. The general outlook in the Midwest, Walter, is the Gilligan-Saxby race in Ohio very close. The Indiana race between Bayh and Ruckelshaus also close. In Kansas, it looks like Bob Dole may be the winner there. Joe Benny, I know you don't have any returns in from the West. All of your states are still...
What did he just say, Bob Dole?
In
1968? I was thinking that was the earliest memories of an election was Bob Dole not winning an election.
Which Tom Kuchel, the Republican whip in the Senate, was defeated in the primary by Rafferty. And Cranston has been given the edge in that seat. Rafferty usually finishes his election campaigns very hard, so you can expect a late surge, but probably not enough to defeat Cranston. In the state of Oregon, perhaps the best-known Senate Wayne Morris is up against some of the toughest opposition he's ever had. Wayne Morris is going for a fifth term, and Robert Packwood is his opponent. He's 36 years old. He's a state legislator and young moderate. He says his political mentor is Mark Hatfield, the other senator from the state of Oregon. Idaho, the other Frank Church is running a hard campaign against George Hansen in a very Republican conservative state, but Church is considered to have the edge. Hansen, a very strong conservative hawk in Vietnam. And one final race of interest in Alaska. Ernest Greening, part of the tandem with Wayne Morris, one of the two senators who voted against the Gulf of Tonkin resolution, is running as a write-in candidate. He's not expected to win. Mike Gravel, the Democrat running against Eleanor Rasmussen, former mayor of Anchorage, and that race is expected to go to Rasmussen.
Okay, so I'm down 100K. And
of course, two senators were elected because they had no opposition, one on either side of the aisle. Louisiana Democrat Russell Long and Vermont's Republican George.
Long term, I'm trying to, still trying to lose another 200. So I'm going to go to a higigher stakes room because it would go faster.
One of the unopposed candidates, David Anderson, an unopposed Democratic nominee. Although he's not running in the House, representative.
I just feel like
David Anderson, unopposed Democratic nominee for Clay County Treasurer in Brazil,
if I don't
was unopposed,
win,
died this morning, just 30 minutes before the polls opened.
At least some. So what am I looking? I guess I'm looking to get 80% of my losses back.
With 4% of the nation's precincts counted, Richard Nixon has now a 42% lead, 1 percentage point lower than he had just a moment ago. Humphrey has 34%, and Wallace is holding at 23%. In the electoral college, where it really counts, where we elect our president, we at CBS News estimate that Nixon will win Kentucky and Florida with 23 electoral votes. Wallace will win Alabama with 10 electoral votes. Wallace leads for 13 other electoral, Nixon leads for 13 other electoral votes, as you see there. We're getting some returns from our sample precincts in cities that have had racial trouble over the last couple of years, areas where it was expected there might be a heavy Wallace vote, a backlash vote. These early figures show, however, that Humphrey is getting 52% of the vote there, followed by Nixon with 34% and a surprisingly small 13% for George Wallace. This is based on just a few of those sample precincts in the riot areas. Early reports also indicate a heavy vote in a number of ghetto areas.
That's the problem. That's why I can't bluff people out, because I'm not doubling or tripling their bluffs from the beginning. That's what I remember I used to do. So, yeah, like that guy just quadrupled it.
Nixon is getting about 10% of that
ghetto
vote.
Come on, man.
Around 3% of the vote, that is. And now, CBS News estimates that when all of the votes are in from the state of North Carolina, Richard Nixon will win North Carolina.
If I just click that auto rebuy button, that's
what of the vote, and Wallace 26% of the vote. Here again, Wallace has not done as well as expected.
I didn't buy more than that. Someone bought me the money symbol, and someone, I don't know what that red diamond means.
But instead, he came in third in both Kentucky and North Carolina. Nixon winning both of those states, Kentucky and North Carolina. So now Nixon gets an additional 13 electoral votes, and it brings his total of electoral votes to something like 36. Let's see what's going on down at the Wallace headquarters in Montgomery, Alabama. Our CBS News correspondent Charles Carroll is there. Charles?
Man,
George Wallace hires a hole in
I just missed out on a flush hand.
This Coliseum will seat about 8,000, and some 5,000 or 6,000 other people can squeeze into it. But the remarkable thing is that most of these seats are empty at this rather late hour.
If I stand up and sit back down,
through this long campaign says it's the smallest Wallace crowd he's seen. But this is the cheering section
stand
of
up and then sit back down.
And who are cheering tonight at every little thing they can find to cheer for. There's no big display board up here, and there's really very little way for the people in the stands to know how the election is going.
But to give you an idea of the faith that the people who've worked for him have in this man, let me just talk to some of the people in the front row. How long have you worked for George Wallace?
Well, somewhere around 12, 14 months in my spare time. Every minute I can spare away from my regular job.
You think he has a chance to win?
I do.
The odds that one person has a spade, give me a
Maybe not
break.
going to man don't mean you won't one day be a man.
You still have hope for tonight?
I hope for tonight and our new party for the future. That's what I want, our new party.
Can George Wallace still become president?
I firmly believe
I'm about to get that flush
How
though.
about you? Do you also have this faith?
We are very optimistic.
Well, what do you have to be optimistic about? It appears that he's lost now in Kentucky and North Carolina and in Florida as well. Aren't those states you hope to carry?
Well, the returns are still young, and we feel that he is a very capable person, and it's just exactly what we need to carry the country through.
Have you worked for him very hard?
It's hardly that good.
Have you put in some hours for George Wallace?
I certainly have. They were all spent happy. I'm proud to say that was within 12 months ago today I started.
It looks as though he's not going to become president tonight.
Well, we don't give up too easy. There's some more time to come yet. We ain't gonna give up. We'll be looking at you 4 years from now. We're gonna follow him right on.
That gives you an idea, Walter, of how these people in Montgomery feel about their man.
Roger Mudd, I gather that we've got an indication of a winner in Florida senatorial race.
Yes, Walter, on the basis of our CBS News estimate, the new congressman from Florida is the new senator from
I
Florida.
think I should have bet 2K instead of 1K. This
Ed Gurney from Winter Park.
I don't even know if I should have raised the ante at all.
Contest 56% to Leroy Collins 44%. Governor Collins trying to make a comeback in Florida after an absence of about 6 years.
Jesus has left the table.
Incidentally, to explain further our estimate in North Carolina in the presidential race, our estimate there, Nixon 43%, Humphrey 31%, Wallace 26%. Our model precincts indicate that in eastern North Carolina, which is considered the heart of the George Wallace country,
Well,
Wallace
there's
ran
nothing
a poor
there,
second.
and
Humphrey
there's
48%, Wallace 35%, Nixon 18%.
nothing going on.
Richard Nixon did well all through the Piedmont area and the Triangle, the Crescent as they call it in North Carolina. They broke even with Hubert Humphrey in the Raleigh-Durham area, but he carried the Greensboro, High Point, Winston-Salem area, 50 for Nixon, 31 for Wallace, and 19 for Humphrey. We can take now a quick sweep of our presidential boards. First in Virginia. 8% of the popular vote is in Virginia. Nixon leading there, 34,000, 24,000, Humphrey, Wallace, 26,000. In South Carolina, 5% of the vote in, Wallace out to an early lead there. In Mississippi, 4% of the vote in, no surprise, Wallace out to an early lead. In Kentucky, which already we estimate has gone for Richard Nixon, there are the figures in Kentucky. In Florida, we estimate will go also for Richard Nixon, there are the popular vote figures there. And in Alabama, which is gone for George Wallace, there are the popular vote figures there. And just a quick look at the electoral
Wait, it was
recap
just
boards of the
me?
South. Richard Nixon has won in the South 36 electoral votes. He's leading with 45 for a possible total of 81. George Wallace has won 10 electoral votes. He's leading for 12 others, a possible total of 22. Hubert Humphrey not yet has broken into the electoral column. Walter? CBS News color coverage of election night 68 will continue in a moment. Now, Dan Rather, I see we've got an interesting situation in Indiana. Let's have a report. In Indiana, our CBS News estimates show that Richard Nixon is very probably will carry Indiana by roughly 54%.
That is the first time I've had anything. I guess that's what it means to get 3 flushes in a row, is that I won't have anything for a long time after that.
Take a look at the board. With 11% of the
Quest complete. I hit the target. That's what it says over there. I hit the target. Quest complete. What did I? Oh, I collected the 4s, I think. I don't know. I don't know if I would say I'm on a streak, but
just over an hour ago in Illinois, not many votes counted. But our CBS News estimate in the state of Illinois.
now I gotta call that.
Maybe a bit close there, closer at least than the Republicans had hoped in Illinois. But we have some of our sample precincts in. We're just too early to have any twin in Illinois. In the Illinois senatorial race, no raw votes in
So
Virginia.
the odds of me winning this are pretty good.
And William Clark, the handpicked candidate,
Just from experience.
and President Johnson over the Vietnam War. While we have no actual vote tabulation in that race, our sample precincts indicate that Senator Dirksen,
Even with
a little closer race than
5 players.
was expected Dirksen to run away from with that race, and our indication is that while Dirksen may win it, it should be fairly close. Walter? Now in popular vote, 5% of the vote in of the nation's precincts. Richard Nixon is holding at 42%, Humphrey at 36%, and Wallace at 22%. That's been steady for the last half hour, 45
I would say
we,
going from 20 to 60,000 means I just got 40,000. The odds of me getting another flush again are, I don't know.
as in,
But
those are the two states in which we
no.
have Humphrey leading at this moment. Checking my
That's like what's going to be the 4th or 5th flush
we have Nixon leading as,
in a row
Dan
that I've
reported
gone
you
for
just a few moments ago.
from pocket. I don't know what to call it when it starts off like that. Oh, am I going to bet 10K on that? No.
I just got a confirmation of that, Dan. You're absolutely right. CBS News estimates that Nixon will win Indiana.
I gotta capture my reaction over here.
38% and Wallace 12% in Indiana. The popular vote, it is still Nixon 42%, Humphrey 36%, and Wallace 22%. With
There's
5%
one
of the nation's
spade. If
precincts
there's
counted.
2 more
Voting there
spades
stands for
drawn,
the last
then I'll have a flush. Nope.
42 to 41% with 1.5
Oh,
million
one more
votes almost.
spade.
Nixon,
So that was
36% of the vote.
so he had a pocket
86,000, and Wallace 23%
clubs,
of the
so
vote, 817,000.
he was doing the same
CBS
thing.
News estimates that in Connecticut, important state of
I don't know who it
Connecticut,
was who upped the ante so much. Oh, it's a lady.
Richard Nixon will get 43% and Wallace 7% in Connecticut.
And she has the money symbol. I don't know, someone gave me that, and it doesn't go away. Normally, the gifts go away.
Wallace 7% of the vote. Mike Wallace? In Connecticut, Walter, Hubert Humphrey has done a good deal better than expected for those 8 electoral votes in that state.
Come on.
He won in every area, but normally
20K on this?
areas,
No, I'm
and in
gonna
some of the rural
fold.
and small town areas of Connecticut. Going into today's election, the state was considered a toss-up, but Humphrey, according to the CBS News estimate, as you said, gets
That's
50%,
just
Nixon 43, Wallace
reckless.
just 7. And that
I
is
don't know
somewhat
who
less
bet
than the
20K
Wallace
for no
vote in
good
Connecticut.
reason.
And there's an interesting note in Connecticut. The vice
That's what
president
happens is
carries
Pocket
more than
Kings.
ghetto
Yeah,
areas,
now
but he also
I'll
carries
bet
more than half of
20K.
the, expected backlash vote.
Did I just go all
In
in?
West Virginia, on the basis of about half of our sample precincts now,
I think that's
Humphrey the winner.
really dangerous
Humphrey,
when
receiving 56% of the vote. Nixon
going
47,
all
Wallace
in
just
on
8% for the time being. Anyway, in West Virginia, I say only 8%. Wallace is not making
with
the
the
inroads that
people who
he would
are
need among blue-collar,
not
low-income voters, or that he had expected in order to get the 18%.
Whatever.
The total that some observers had predicted ahead of time that Wallace would get. In New Jersey, with half of our sample precincts in, and that's a big state for both candidates, Nixon and Humphrey. As you can
So I
see,
lost
according to the
10K on
tabulated
that,
votes,
but
Humphrey and,
that's not too
Nixon are just
bad.
about tied, and Wallace well
We're going
down.
all
But with
in.
half of our sample precincts in, it remains too close to call. This is a state that Nixon had counted on, but Humphrey is running very well in Newark and other large cities, doing extremely well in the Negro ghetto areas. Evidently, they have been successful up to now in getting out the Negro ghetto vote. Wallace's biggest strength so far is in the backlash areas of Newark and Jersey City. In the state of Vermont, Richard Nixon leading.
What was that?
Where Wallace was supposed to do
Oh, that was
well
like a
on the
VHS tape?
country. Show that Wallace is not doing as well as expected, getting about 7% of the vote in those blue-collar workers areas. Humphrey is actually getting 48%. Nixon is getting 41%. Perhaps a little better than the Republican candidate normally do in the blue-collar areas.
Come on,
According
man.
to this, Wallace is not doing as well as he expected.
That
Humphrey
ain't
is
it.
not doing as well as the Democratic candidate normally would do in those areas. We have 6% of the national popular vote in now, with 41% for Nixon, 23% for Wallace, and 36% for Humphrey. 5% split there between Nixon and Humphrey. Wallace running at 23% with this small total of votes in from the country as a whole, and many precincts still open. CBS News color coverage of election night 68 will continue in a moment. In the electoral vote, where it counts, it takes 270 electoral votes to win the presidency. You know, the popular vote only determines where the electoral votes go state by state. CBS News has estimated now that Nixon will win Kentucky, Florida, North Carolina, and Indiana for a total of 49 electoral votes. Humphrey will win
Feeling hot.
West Virginia for a total of 15. Wallace will win Alabama for a total of 10. And now CBS News says that in Kansas, according to our sample precincts in, Nixon should win that heavily Republican state with 57% of the vote. Humphrey 35.
That winning was
8% in Kansas.
pretty
adds,
pathetic
to
in my
the
opinion.
Nixon, total,
You ain't all
electoral
that to be
votes for Kansas,
betting
which would bring him to a total of 56
16K.
electoral votes on our board. Nixon is also leading in Missouri, Vermont, Tennessee, Texas. Humphrey's leading in Illinois, Michigan, Massachusetts.
Yeah.
Dan Rather,
70K pot is large enough.
Races have some importance for us now. Right, Walter, we'll get to the things are breaking so quickly on the presidential race in the Midwest that I think we better go to that first.
Press check, press check. What's going on here? Press check, press check.
We'll carry the state of Kansas, although the raw vote figures in Kansas are
Raise.
opposed.
Check.
So Nixon out front of Humphrey and George
There we
Wallace
go.
third. CBS News, I repeat, you can see the check mark beside Richard Nixon's name, estimates that Richard Nixon will carry Kansas. Now, we're beginning to get substantial reports, our sample precincts, at least in Michigan. But first, let's take a look at the actual counted vote.
Drum
in
roll,
Michigan, one of the prizes in the
please.
Midwest with 21 electoral votes. Only 1% of the actual vote tabulated. Those are the figures. Humphrey out front, Nixon second, and Wallace third. Now, the CBS News estimate in Michigan was nearly one-third of our sample
Ooh,
precincts.
time to go.
Humphrey is
Time to
leading, and due in large
leave.
part to the low number of votes in the Wallace column in Michigan. In the backlash areas, for example,
I got
Humphrey
80% of my winnings back, and it was 80,000.
Too early to say in Michigan, but Humphrey is leading in
We'll
Michigan.
fold,
In
though.
Missouri, our first real totals.
But the idea is
With 2% of the vote in. There you see
the
figures.
dealer always
Nixon,
changes.
Wallace
It'll
winning,
show
one-third
who's
in
the
the
dealer
vote,
over
minus
here.
the actual tabulated vote, only 2% of it counts.
Where's that little
Our CBS News estimates
D?
indicate that Missouri
There's
will
like a
fall
little
vote
D.
despite Fort Nixon,
It's hard to
despite the
see.
actual tabulated vote, only 2% of it in. Our
Oh,
CBS
it's right here at the very
sample
left. And now it just went up to the dealer. She deal.
appears to be leading Humphrey by about
And then this
32 to
D
38%.
that's right next to her at her
Nixon
right
George Wallace.
hand.
Again, the indication is
I
George
don't know
Wallace may not
if
be running as
it
well in
goes
Missouri
somewhere
as
else
he
or
may
something. I don't know what's going on here.
In that state of
10K?
Ohio,
No, I just got all of my winnings back.
In the state of Ohio, with 12% of the vote counted, those are the figures Nixon leading.
So I could just sit here and fold and fold and fold and fold and give back to whoever's going to sit here long enough and give it back to him. Who did I even take this money from? I don't know. I don't even know. It happened so fast. I didn't even think I was going to win with a pair of kings. I was going to win all my winnings back. But the idea is I have to give them back 20% or 80% of the profits that I made on my investment. And that's just a rule of thumb or whatever. And so I got to sit here and fold up my annies and stuff like that. A lot of people don't know that this is what's going on.
24 states, the polls are still open, although we're making estimates on the basis of early returns from our sample precincts on winners in some of these states. This does not mean that the votes in other areas are at all unimportant. In fact, in many cases, they're critical and certainly will be as far as your state.
I bet if I looked in, I got to go check into books to see I'm going to bet 1K, and I know that. No, I'm just going to call 50. If I bet 1K, they might jack it up to 10 or 20K for just the ante. I got to look through. See, here's a 20. No, there's no way that I'm going to get another flush here. And if I get a flush, I'm going to be so mad. I'm not even going to look, but I got to look through those books to see how much people used to talk about playing poker. Because I think this version of poker is a lot older than Texas. I think people used to play Texas Hold'em before Texas was a word or a state incorporated. And if it wasn't called Texas Hold'em, what was it called? Because to play poker for 2 hours and get 3 flushes in a row, playing the regular 5-card draw poker, I would have to play like 100,000 hands, just like 100,000 hands or whatever. Check. Now here we're playing for a pot of 350 chips. And
Some writer wondered if, on the basis of these early returns yet tonight, any way to the future is casting any shadows in the Democratic Party in the South. Well, I think it's clearly doing that.
I don't know what it is.
It seems to me that on the basis of what we know now from these figures, that
it's not funny.
even more than ever a distinctly different
It's
political
a waste.
national body politic. It's going to be conservative.
40K, man, come on. You
You
ain't all that to be betting 43K there.
Carolina apparently is trying to go Republican. If it does that,
I'm gonna tell line 95. You ain't all that.
It seems reasonable to speculate that we're not going to have a landslide, at least in the popular vote, between the two leading candidates of the major parties. The early
Sorry.
September, for example, it indicated a 16%
I'll say
spread between Nixon and
no. I'm not gonna call 20K.
out of the pattern of American voting, particularly when the two candidates
At line
the mainstream of American political life. It's very rare
95.
64 4 years ago was not a normal apposition at all. I would think that if Mr. Humphrey is counting on picking up two of the big Midwestern states to offset Mr.
You
Nixon this time, then he must be
ain't
nervous about it as of this hour tonight.
all that
From what I've read the report. And one would think he would have to take Missouri if he were going
in
to
the
do
bag
much
of
in the
chips.
Midwest, comparable to what Mr. Truman did in '48 when those Midwest states went to him the last couple of weeks of campaign and offset what Dewey was doing in New York, for example. This would look a bit shaky, I would think, for Humphrey in the Midwest. Walter?
At line 95, you ain't all that. I just told him.
But I think the Humphrey hopes came down to that. Make a breakthrough in Missouri. Those early returns that Dan's reporting to us a little earlier.
I'm gonna go for the what you call it.
And very possibly Republicans will run stronger there as more returns come in. Speaking of Republicans in the South and the
They're
Democratic
laughing.
Party there, Eric, Senator Strom Thurmond has played a very important part in this political campaign this year. He was the former
I
Democratic
just said
senator
it
from
ain't
North Carolina,
funny.
went over to the Republican Party after a brief flirtation with his own political party, the state's writers.
Oh man, am I gonna bet a 10K on a flush? Oh, that's not a flush. I thought that was a spade. Oh, I'm gonna get a. I'd get a straight though because I have 5, 8, 6, and 9. He had a full house, or I had a full house. I'm gonna say it ain't funny.
7% of the nation's precincts have reported now, and it is holding steady as it has now for the last 15 to 20 minutes, with Nixon at 41%, Humphrey at 36%, and Wallace at 22%. For a very brief moment there, Humphrey had closed the gap to 4%.
Funny.
He was up at 37%, but now
No.
as figures he's back down to 36%. Of course, this is a very
I gotta do an exclamation part because I don't know.
Estimate now on the presidential race in Georgia. CBS
I just
estimates that when all the
seems
votes are
more
counted in
mad.
southern state, George Wallace will pick up Georgia with 49% of the vote. Humphrey coming in second with 27%, and Nixon 24%. 12 electoral votes
Without
for
the
George Wallace
exclamation
in
point.
Georgia to add to his 10 in Alabama. And the CBS News estimate in Vermont. CBS News, the figures show that when all of the count has been made, Nixon will win in Vermont by 57% of the vote, Humphrey 40%, and Wallace 3. Nixon thus adds Vermont's 3 electoral votes to his total to bring his total to 59. Wallace has a total of 22 now, and Humphrey with his wins in Connecticut and West Virginia, as we at CBS News see it, has 15 electoral votes.
I said it ain't funny. Now he getting mad.
Vote, he has closed the gap to 4%. He's run up to 37%, and Nixon 41%, and Wallace 22%.
He's still laughing over
The
there.
Nixon headquarters, Bill Plant, is with the key Nixon aide, Bob Finch, California. Bill?
Walter, as you know, Bob Finch who is the Lieutenant Governor of California, is a close friend and aide of Richard Nixon's. In 1960 was his national campaign director. Bob, are you concerned at all about the outcome of this?
I have a strange sense of detachment about this one, unlike '60 when it was such a horse race. And I know I'm willing to say right now we'll probably win. I think we'll be in excess of 360 electoral votes.
I would say that ain't it.
Well, as I say, it's a different ball.
Or what's that from that song that in the 90s? That's not it.
Well, of course, the bombing halt was an event that
That's what that means. Is it ain't it?
I think most Americans felt instinctively that it was done for political reasons. But
That's not
Um,
of
it.
course, Mr. Nixon disagreed with you on that publicly. That's right. The political effect was that event. I think probably
No, I'm not going to say that.
Connecticut vote. On the other hand, we're very pleased because we've got the insurance states of Kentucky, Tennessee, Florida. I think we'll get Texas, states where we're in some question. So which are you watching for now as your key states? We'll watch Pennsylvania, we'll watch Ohio, we'll watch Michigan. But as I say, I predict victory.
Governor, or Lieutenant Governor Finch, if this campaign were to be run again, would you advise Mr. Nixon to do it at all differently?
No, sir. I think this has been a sound campaign.
20K for nothing? No. But I guess they're giving me a way out because
I wouldn't change a thing.
Thanks very much for
what am I trying to do here? So I won 80% of my winnings back, and here soon I'm going to have a streak, and appears to be right now.
According to our CBS News estimate, Humphrey 15 and Wallace 22. Nixon also is leading in Oklahoma, South Carolina, Tennessee, and Virginia.
20K on a pair of 10s. Yeah, I'll do it. He's gone all in. Yeah.
Humphrey is running ahead of John Kennedy.
Feeling hot.
This is Walter Cronkite at CBS News Election Headquarters. CBS News coverage of election night 68. Reporting from election headquarters, Walter Cronkite.
Grinding teeth.
Now have 9% of the nation's precincts tabulated, the votes, with still a great number of states open, although at 9 o'clock at this very hour Eastern Standard Time, many states are closing. We have
coming soon.
All states have
Winning
slammed
streak.
the precinct doors at the given moment. 42 of the states closed, leaving some 8 states open.
That
Only
ain't
still available for balloting will be Montana, Nebraska, Utah,
10K.
Hawaii, California, Idaho, Oregon, Washington, Alaska, of course. With 9% of the vote counted, Nixon now has 41% of the vote, as indeed he has had for the last half hour or so. Humphrey is holding steady of 37% of the vote, and Wallace with 21% of the vote. Our CBS News estimate is, however, that Nixon has won a total of 7 states, Humphrey 3, and Wallace 2 at this point. And looking at our map, we can see where those votes have come from. Nixon, according to our CBS News estimate...
So if I just lost with a pair of pocket 10s,
Nixon has won Kentucky with 9 electoral votes, Florida with 14, North Carolina 13, Indiana 13, Kansas,
the odds of me winning with a pair of pocket 10s
are
are apparently increased,
West Virginia, and the District of Columbia,
even though they are unaffected by the outcome of the previous hand where I had a pair of pocket 10s. And it's not good. Go ahead and check.
Humphrey 32% and Wallace 21. District of Columbia, Humphrey will win by 73% of the vote, and Nixon 27% of the vote. Nixon is not doing quite so well in the cities as he did in 1960, as I reported to you a little while ago. But Humphrey is doing better than John Kennedy did in the cities in 1960. Nixon, 38% of the big city votes, according to our sample precinct.
Yeah,
CBS
5K.
News, getting about 34% of the vote.
Better 5K though.
62% of the big city vote, whereas John Kennedy got 61% of the big city vote in 1960. Mike Wallace, I think you've got an interesting call in Connecticut.
I do indeed, Walter. Senator Abraham Rutherford has been returned to the Senate of the United States. Let's take a look at the tabulated vote.
Okay.
30% of that vote in
Pocket diamonds.
3,000. Edwin May,
1K.
8,000 votes. And
2K.
according to the CBS News estimate, when all those votes are counted in Connecticut, Rutherford will have 55% of the vote, May 45. Let's take a look at Pennsylvania now, where with 6% of the vote tabulated in the presidential contest, you see that Richard Nixon is running 157,000 to Humphrey's 141,000, and Wallace went well behind at 19,000 votes. In Pennsylvania, with its 29 big electoral votes, there is now no trend. In spite of the fact that more than 2/3 of our sample precincts are in. Hubert Humphrey's doing very well in Philadelphia. He's leading Nixon in Pittsburgh. He's taken an overwhelming lead in the Negro ghetto. And he's ahead of Nixon in voting among blue-collar workers.
I don't know if anyone who's in here. I haven't been paying attention to other people because I'm live streaming. Normally I pay attention to who's in here and stuff like that. That one's still there. Got another 5K on a chance of a flush. All I got was a pair.
8,000 votes in Massachusetts. Wallace with 2,700 odd. Humphrey fashioned that victory in Massachusetts in a rather interesting way. He leads Nixon 3-1 in the area of Boston. He leads Nixon 2-1 in the suburbs of Massachusetts. He leads Nixon 4-1 in the black ghettos of Massachusetts, and also 4-1 in the backlash areas of the state of Massachusetts. And the CBS News estimate,
if I could make them fold 1, 2, 3, 4 people. Fold? No, he's going for it. No, I'm a fold.
Humphrey is running strong in Baltimore, in the city of Baltimore, while Nixon has a small edge now in the
wow,
suburbs, and
okay.
easily as expected in the
So
rural and small town areas. George Wallace, who has had
3 of us folded.
because of the fact that he made such a strong run in the 1964 presidential primary, taking 43% of the Democratic vote in that state. He is running his strongest.
I don't know if
in the
the
rural
stream's
eastern shore
working or what.
area of Maryland, long known for its resistance to rapid civil rights progress. White blue-collar areas near large Negro population centers gave Wallace about 20% of the vote, but they're still turning in a substantial edge for Hubert Humphrey. And in Maryland, it is too close to call still between Richard Nixon and Hubert Humphrey.
There is no house here.
Humphrey had won in the
Like there's no, the house always wins because there is no house. It's a game, it's a poker game. 3 of a kind. Oh, and the pot is so small.
There is,
That's why I always
just 1%
try to raise the
tabulated vote in,
pot
and there's no trend yet,
because
in spite of the fact that we have three voters in the sample precincts reporting. Humphrey leading in the city of
I'm
Wilmington,
giving them an
highly
out to
Democratic
fold.
areas, among
If I
Hillary
went
Clinton,
all
Obama,
in,
Nixon, Nixon
probably at
leading,
least
normally
one or two or
Republican
three,
areas. That's about it for now. Of course, the
maybe
points still
everyone
down
would
New York
fold.
City, New York State and the East.
And
With that,
he's
CBS
considering
estimate,
folding right there, the
Massachusetts, Mike, means that
boss.
Humphrey is closing the gap in both
Considering
electoral vote
folding,
and popular vote.
and
Electoral vote, he has 32 now,
if the
Nixon
boss
67,
folds,
and
everyone might
popular vote
follow
with just
suit.
10% now of the nation's precincts counted.
So we
He
fold,
has closed the
and
gap to within 3%. And some of the big city votes, big state
three of a
votes,
kind, I'm gonna
this
win
vote
for
in particular,
sure.
is yet to
Unless
come
it's
in.
someone who
CBS News
get
color
a
coverage, election
flush
night
or
68 will continue
straight,
in a moment.
and that not looking like
Now reporting on the South, Roger Mudd. Well, Walter, Senator Mike
or a
Mulroney,
full house.
said, during
Someone
the
might go
campaign, I'll
full
give you one brownie
house.
point for every pickup truck you see without
Why is it
But
just
tonight,
timing
the
out
George
everybody?
Wallace, did not do that well in
I'm
Oklahoma.
getting excited
The CBS
over
News
here. I'm gonna
estimate
turn
is
the
that,
camera off.
if I can find it. In Oklahoma, Nixon has won Oklahoma when all the votes are in. 47% Humphrey, 32% George Wallace, 21%. Looking at our CBS News estimate, model precincts indicate that only in what is called Little Dixie in Oklahoma did Hubert Humphrey beat Richard Nixon. And in Little Dixie, which is Carl Albert's home district, George Wallace ran a good second. But that was the only area of Oklahoma in which Wallace made a good showing. He ran third, very close to Humphrey, but always third in every other part of the state. In the Oklahoma Senate race, where Mike Mulroney is in quite a fight tonight against Henry
And
Bowen,
it's gonna
the
get
Republican governor of Oklahoma. Mulroney is trailing.
higher and higher, and
That's to be a very close
well, I
race
just mean
until too close to call.
the
Mulroney is
stakes.
taking credit for the aerospace
Yeah.
prosperity in Oklahoma. Bellman claiming
What
that
does
his
that even
association
say
with
there?
Richard Nixon
11K?
given
Yeah,
instant seniority in the
11K.
White House. In the South Carolina presidential returns, 28% of the popular vote is in, and George Wallace is in the lead, but not by much. The question there was whether Strom Thurmond's activity in behalf of Nixon would produce a stalemate that Hubert Humphrey might slip in.
That's
There's no
mine.
chance of that. And in the South Carolina senatorial race, the incumbent
Okay, so I got 80% of my investment back,
term is in an early lead against Mark
and I
Martin,
have another
performance
chance
from
for
1976.
pocket. I got
Collins
pocket
is, 4-1
diamond.
against the Republican Parker. And finally, in the Texas presidential returns, 5% of that popular vote is in.
And diamond is what
Of course,
the dice look
beneficiary
like
of a late,
when
closing,
they're
Democratic harmony that's helped him considerably. Richard Nixon
in
would be
the
benefited immensely by
when
that block
they're
of 25
before they
electoral votes,
the dice
with
land.
much
They look
vote in.
like a
Humphrey now
diamond.
has an early but very slight lead. Roger, may I interrupt you, or am I interrupting you? You thought offer. Well, I was going to interrupt you to say that CBS News now estimates that Humphrey will win the state of Michigan with its nice sizable block of 21 electoral votes for his camp. Now, the Humphrey forces had anticipated on the basis of polling that they possibly would win Michigan. CBS News estimates now that they will.
Pair of
2%
fours
of the
is
vote,
all I got out of that.
And Wallace, 9% of the vote. That's a larger win in Michigan than Humphrey had anticipated. But with the 21 extra votes now from Michigan in the electoral column.
Like, we're never actually going by just the card part of it. Like, the betting is what makes it interesting. Two pair. I'll bet the whole pot.
The key to Hubert Humphrey's apparent victory in Michigan was the low total that George Wallace got and the high turnout in the Union areas of Michigan, particularly.
The odds that someone has a full house are like really
a little bit more about what's happening in the
high.
Midwest tonight could be in for a shock in the morning because more and more it appears that it's going to be very close indeed in the big electoral vote states of Illinois and Ohio. The picture in the Midwest at the moment is CBS News estimates that Richard Nixon has carried Indiana and Kansas.
Pocket Queens definitely going to be doing that. What does that say there? 9.9K, sure.
4% of the vote in Illinois. So Hubert Humphrey leading, Richard Nixon second.
I'm not trying to out bluff anyone when I got a pair of pocket queens though.
In somewhat substantial numbers in the state of Illinois over the last hour, but it's simply too close.
I'm gonna go ahead and raise
We're not anywhere near calling anyone a winner.
30.
We're not anywhere near spotting a
Let me
trend.
take that pot
itself should tell you something,
right
because
now.
they thought that they were in very good shape in Illinois, and my guess is they would have expected by this time to have spotted a trend for themselves, Richard Nixon in Illinois. That is not the case, and Illinois more and more begins to look like it may be close. Now, how does that affect that Illinois Senate race, where Everett Dirksen was expected to run away with it? The actual vote totals show Dirksen trailing State Attorney General William Clark. That's just 4% of the actual vote, and there's a change on the board now with 5% of the vote. Keep in mind, most of these votes are big city votes. Primarily from Chicago.
With a pair?
Running ahead of
Oh, okay, 123. So I got my money back. I just robbed whoever that one is, and I'll. I don't know. Everybody's mad at me, so like it's like, what, you know what I mean? Like, what? Everybody's getting mad. Like I just robbed one over there, and so I got to give them 80% of the money back if I just robbed them for. I just robbed one for 50% of their money, so I gotta wait. I don't know. I don't know how I'm gonna do that. Give them 80% of the winnings back because at this point I think I'm in the green or whatever, or in the red or whatever it's called, in the black. I don't know. But I'm definitely not about to do no $10,000 on that.
CBS News headquarters, where we're keeping tabs of this exciting election night, which is turning out to be a lot closer with the early counts in than had been anticipated at least 2 or 3 weeks ago.
So I folded.
11% of the vote in.
Nixon has 41%, and Humphrey has moved up another
40K
39% of the vote. Wallace has dropped back
pot.
to 20% of the vote.
I don't know what to call a pot instead of a pot. It's
showing 20%. That's his showing averages in our CBS News estimate.
call it the GoFundMe is what I'll call it instead of a pot. It's a GoFundMe.
15 states now. Let's say 12 states. We have been able to make an estimate on final return.
That guy just won a 40,000 GoFundMe with a pair of whatever that was. Not just kidding.
In the border states, but a whopping big percentage in the southern states, like 65%, for instance, in Georgia.
Go with the 5.
The average comes out in those 12
Oh
states
yeah,
to be
that's what they were
20%
doing. The
for
5. 5,000 GoFundMe anti. Initial investment is what it's called. $5,000 initial GoFundMe investment per head. Oh no, so it's going higher. I don't know if I'm going for a straight here, but I'm not. With 8, 9, 10, the odds of having a 10 and a queen drawn. 20K? Come on. Yo, I would if one had bet that. I'm just going to pretend that one had bet that. 40K with a pair of nothings. He's going for a flush, probably. And he got the flush on the last card. Ooh. 50K then. I'm gonna have to say something. That ain't it, man.
North Carolina is now in his column. He thought that Florida and Kentucky were shaky, and he has put those in his column. He has not so far lost to any of the states that he had counted on in his figure of 270 electoral votes enough to win. Let's go to David Shoemaker now at the Humphrey headquarters for the mood out there in Minnesota. David?
10K.
Well, Waller, for the first time tonight, you can see the potential, at least, for a victory party here. Some smiles beginning to appear over the later results that we've had. So far tonight, everything has been going according to form, and in a way that's been bad news, of course, because Hubert Humphrey needs a few surprises if he wins this election. He expected to carry West Virginia, Connecticut, the District of Columbia, Massachusetts. He expected to lose Florida and Indiana. So, no surprise, no breaking form. However, there was good news in the Michigan return. It was really for the first time tonight here in the hotel ballroom. We're also pleased that the 3% margin now by which Mr. Humphrey trails Mr. Nixon.
8K on this.
Unable to talk to any of Mr. Humphrey's political advisors there upstairs. Looking over the return, not have any further comments later on tonight. David Shoemaker, back to you. The popular vote, that percentage figure has changed just a little bit. We have 12% of the popular vote in now, and Nixon has lengthened the lead to 4% again, 42% with 3,889,000 votes, 38%, 3.5 million for Humphrey, and Wallace, you see before our eyes, has dropped to 19% of the vote. And I hope
man, it happens so fast.
It happened election a time or two ago when we first were able to show you these votes even as they were tabulated, and those little clickers clicked off the numbers as they were fed into the display panels. And I had an angry letter from a gentleman out in the little western states who accused us of stealing votes from one of the candidates and giving them to the other because he saw it happen right in front of his eyes. And we should have been honest enough to admit what we were doing.
10K on a 7 and a queen.
We don't do it that way. This is the vote that is tabulated and counted by
the habit that I'm in is not great right now.
Around the country with 125,000 persons collecting them for all of us. 42% for Nixon, 38 for Humphrey, 19 for Wallace. It's a voter crime guide at CBS News election.
CBS News coverage of election night 68 continues. Reporting from election headquarters, correspondent Walter Cronkite.
We now have 13% of the nation's precincts counted and tabulated, and the percentage difference between Richard Nixon and Hubert Humphrey has narrowed to 2%. Richard Nixon leading with 41%, 4.5 million votes. Humphrey 39%, 4.25 million votes, and Wallace standing right about that 20% point where he's held most of the evening with a little over 2 million votes. CBS News estimates the final returns in
Nobody
two
had a
states
full
now.
house
In Virginia,
on that?
CBS
That's
News estimates that Nixon will
unbelievable.
win with 49% of the vote. Humphrey will get 29% of the vote, and Wallace 22% of the
Someone
vote.
bets
In
10K.
Virginia,
I know they're going
that,
to.
Nixon possibly would win there, but his margin was not thought to be quite that high. Virginia has 12 electoral votes. Louisiana, CBS News estimates that Wallace will win in Louisiana. That was anticipated also, that he will get in Louisiana 52% of the vote. Humphrey will get 27% of the vote, and Nixon 21% of the vote for Louisiana's 10 electoral votes.
So in the electoral count, we now have this shape up in the nation's picture. We can show you on our map. Nixon has won a total of 8 states with Virginia. That would be shown there in the
That's mine.
on your black and white sets, in light blue on your color sets. Kentucky, Florida, North Carolina, and Virginia.
That wasn't all mine, though? How is that not all mine?
Indiana there, Vermont in the northeastern states. Humphrey, shown there in yellow on your color sets and white on the black and white, has won 4 states. Connecticut with 8 electoral votes, West Virginia with 7, Massachusetts with 14, and the District of Columbia. Wallace now has won 4 votes, according to 4 states, according to our CBS News estimate: Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi, and Louisiana. And it might be noteworthy with Humphrey holding 53 electoral votes and Nixon 79, that at this stage in the evening, Humphrey has now, if our CBS News...
I wouldn't do that to him because I didn't even...
1964.
Well...
152 electoral votes, you remember. Humphrey apparently has won at least 53, and he's leading for 99 others. Roger Mudd, perhaps you can tell us more about the results there in the South.
The Waller in Virginia, which CBS News estimates now has gone for Richard Nixon.
Damn, that's a huge GoFundMe, though.
a good strong run in the Richmond area. He lost the city, but he carried the suburbs, which in Richmond are very conservative. Mr. Nixon also carried the suburbs in northern Virginia, just across the Potomac River from Washington, D.C., Arlington and Alexandria. In the high Democratic voting areas, Nixon took 1 out of every 2 votes in Virginia. In the blue-collar class in Virginia, Mr. Nixon took 1 out of every 2 votes. The popular vote from Virginia shows with about a quarter of it now in, Nixon with 117,000, Wallace running a third, not a bad third, but still third. In Louisiana, which is
I just have to say thank everyone.
there's no vote showing. There must be something, and we'll come back and perhaps find it a little bit later.
I'm going to say thanks so much, y'all.
With 22% of the popular vote in, George Wallace
Got lucky.
62,000 over Humphrey's 26,000.
Thanks so much.
Still very much in doubt. 72% of the popular vote in. Nixon, 321,000. Wallace, 260,000. Humphrey, 212,000.
Saying thanks. I ain't trying to give no 20K. Thanks so much.
Of the vote in. Humphrey has the lead. Went into Texas in the final week of the campaign. Humphrey now running first, Nixon second, and Wallace very badly trailing in third place. And finally, in the North Carolina Senate race, Sam Ervin has been reelected, as expected. His opponent, Republican Bob Summers, really never had a race to make. Everyone conceded the Senate seat to Sam Ervin. And in North Carolina's gubernatorial race, we have a winner there. Robert Scott, the present lieutenant governor, according to the CBS News estimate, has defeated Republican Jim Gardner. And all these votes are cast. The estimate is Scott 58%, Gardner 42%. Jim Gardner was the man who broke with Republican tradition and tried to go after the Wallace vote in the eastern part of the state, and in so doing made the old guard Republicans in his state very angry, and the division apparently has cost him the election. And one more call, Walter. In the Georgia senatorial race, no surprise here, Herman Talmadge has been reelected to the United States Senate, beating his Republican opponent, Earl Patton, in a final case. Roger, don't worry about the Louisiana returns. The rider bearing them has reached Tallahassee. All is well, and you'll be here shortly. I might mention that we're very pleased to now have our CBS affiliate KGMB TV in Honolulu, and, what is more, we'll wonder if never cease, 2 Australian stations, TCN in Sydney and GTV in Melbourne, who are joining us now. They are carrying our CBS News election coverage by like other stations.
20K.
Are going to join us for this live coverage later this evening. For those of you who aren't quite so far distant and are still in the United States, continental or offshore, let us remind you that the polls are still open in 8 states. There's still plenty of time to cast your ballots in 8 of our states, including Alaska and Hawaii, of course. And incidentally, of course, it's not just the presidential ballot that you'll be casting in those states, but 43 of our states are electing legislatures, as well as electing congressmen and senators and governors, voting on a lot of propositions. In Dearborn, Michigan, where 2 years ago, you may remember,
I don't know what happened with the audio there.
Whether the population of Dearborn, Michigan, favored an immediate ceasefire and withdrawal of U.S. troops from Vietnam so that the people of Vietnam could solve their own problems. That's the way it was phrased on the ballot. Not that they were trying to push you one way or the other in the vote. That's the way it was phrased. And this year, the yes votes in favor of immediate ceasefire and withdrawal, 19,553. No, 14,676. Dearborn's lost 42 men in the Vietnam War, and apparently ready to pull out of Vietnam. It'll have no effect, of course, on policy in Washington. CBS News color coverage.
35K? No.
14% of the nation's precincts counted. Richard Nixon, 41% of the vote. Humphrey, 39% of the vote. Wallace, 19% of the vote. Nixon, according to our CBS News estimate, has won 8 states with a total of 79 electoral votes. Humphrey has won 4 states with a total of 32 electoral votes. And Wallace has won a total of 4 states with 39 electoral votes. Humphrey's vote should be 53 electoral votes. Excuse me. Mike Wallace.
Walter, Senator Jacob Javits, Republican incumbent from New York, has been returned to the Senate. He wins over Paul O'Dwyer, James Buckley, by 2-1 as expected. Javits with 50% of the vote. In spite of what you see here with the tabulated vote, it's still 0%. CBS News estimate gives Javits 50% of the vote. Paul O'Dwyer 34%. Buckley 16%. But most interesting in the East, with massive New York State still to report, the Democratic Party seems to be building toward another historic victory on the Eastern Seaboard, where it won overwhelmingly in 1964 and in 1960 with John Kennedy. In the cities of the Eastern Seaboard, Hubert Humphrey is running at least 20 percentage points ahead of Nixon. Nixon is winning in the small cities and the rural areas by about 5 percentage points. He's carrying the suburbs, but with a 10 percentage point lead, and that's a good deal less than he needs. And perhaps the most interesting story here in the East is that despite the high racial tensions of this year, George Wallace is winning only 5 or 6% of the vote on the Eastern Seaboard. In cities that have been hit by riots, Wallace does no better than in other areas of the nation. Now, let's move to the New Jersey board first of all. As you can see, Nixon is leading Humphrey 390,000 to 353,000 with 27% of the tabulated vote in New Jersey. But according to our CBS News estimate, with 75 of our 80 sample precincts in, Humphrey is in the lead. He is not in the lead sufficiently for us to suggest that he is going to wind up the winner, but he is running stronger than had
what's going
in the
on?
state of New Jersey. In Newark and Jersey City, which are in effect extensions of New York City, Humphrey's getting 6 of every 10 votes. By comparison, in Bergen and Passaic counties, which
No, I got no followers. Said YouTube real money.
No.
No.
The high-income areas, Humphrey the low-income areas, as expected.
I've never been monetized on YouTube,
75% of our sample precincts are in.
and I've been uploading since 2006,
That is not what is important. With 3/4 of our sample precincts in now,
or maybe even
particularly
sooner.
in the city of New York, Humphrey is running well behind Lyndon Johnson in 1964.
Man, my odds of getting a flush are
But
not
sufficiently
great,
behind to
but
make
they're
much of a
worth,
difference.
I'd
According
say,
to CBS News estimate, the way
2K
he is running
though.
now, if things proceed the way they are, Humphrey will wind up with 52% of the vote here in New York State, Richard Nixon with 43%, and George Wallace with 5% in New York. The big story, of course, in New York is the New York City vote, Kennedy came into New York.
I don't know if
Losing by 400,000. Came into New York City, losing by
12K.
400,000 in 1960, but he rolled up almost
Wait, who
800,000
called
in New York
me?
City alone
Oh,
to take the stake. Humphrey will not
Lion.
do well, but at the moment it looks as though he's going to do well
No.
enough, possibly to win. Certainly he is leading.
That's
And finally,
nothing,
in
though.
Pennsylvania, with a block of 29 electoral votes, with 13% of the tabulated votes counted, Nixon barely leading Hubert Humphrey, 300,000 to 200, well, going up a little bit, 364,000 to 352,000. But the story with almost all of our sample precincts, and the story in Pennsylvania is much the same as that in New York. Humphrey is doing 2-1 in the city of Philadelphia. He is doing 54 to 33 in the city of Pittsburgh. That is the crucial. Those are the two crucial spots for Hubert Humphrey. If he comes out of Philadelphia with a lead of 250,000, if he comes out of Pittsburgh with a lead of 100,000, then it's likely that he can carry. At the moment, he is
55K
leading
for
in
no
the state of
reason.
Pennsylvania. And incidentally, also in Pennsylvania, veteran Senator Joe Clark seems to be in trouble. He's running ahead in Philadelphia, in Pittsburgh, and in the Black Meadow areas, but his opponent, Republican Congressman Richard Schweiker, is running a strong race just
Here we
about
go,
everywhere
pocket
else. At
diamonds.
the moment of the tabulated vote, they're even. But according to our sample precinct, Schweiker is ahead. Over.
Arizona, CBS News estimates
10K? Is it worth a 10K bet? I don't know. I'm a martingale though, because I bet 5K on the last one.
That would bring Nixon's total in the states where CBS News estimates he will win to 84. Humphrey has 5 states.
44K? No way, man.
Gordon Dean is with Larry O'Brien, Democratic National Committee Chairman and the manager of the Humphrey campaign. Humphrey says we're in Minneapolis. Coming Morton. Walter, I think that Larry looks rather relaxed at this point. Larry, are you concerned? Do you think the Vice President is going to take this election? Oh, this is going to be a very close election. We're going to be visiting each other off and on, I would think, over many hours. It's beginning to develop as most people envision. It's very close. We are doing very well in the industrial east. We are running ahead in Pennsylvania and New York. Of course, have had significant wins in Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Michigan. Other states are in balance, and it appears to that we are going to have an excellent showing.
And 50.
You make a prediction now as to whether Mr. Humphrey will win the necessary 270 electoral votes. It appears to be holding the position that we now
I'm maybe at 50% of my losses.
Election will be decided in California, plus some other states in the Southwest and the Far West. And I would say on that basis, at this early stage this evening, that we are in an excellent position, very frankly, to secure the necessary number of electoral votes. I sincerely believe that. This is
Man, can I really outlast this whole table?
Well, we have this close popular vote. We have an 8-point spread in favor of Mr. Nixon an hour ago.
Well, if I just won with the, what you call it, 2 pair, the odds of me winning with another 2 pair are not good. And so now, my loss, not great. My loss, very, very great.
Come along and you have the vote, for example, from Philadelphia, which in my judgment will show a Humphrey majority of 250,000.
I thought,
We will carry the state of
okay,
Pennsylvania.
so,
I think all of this augurs well. It's a tough one, it's a close one, but we're doing very well. Morton and Larry, Larry O'Brien, Motor Crown Guy, New York.
it almost make it easier if I lose 100,000 right away, so to remember how much I'm in the red.
I didn't expect to move that rapidly. That's at 60 seconds.
No, because I'm at 50% in the red right now because I have 15,000 chips.
California holding the balance. I gather that if you say that, you're fairly confident about California. What I was trying to say, Walter, is that all of us are going to have a long evening and we're going to be looking very carefully at California. I couldn't have been more pleased with what I observed in California just yesterday, and I'm optimistic about it. And the West Coast is...
what do I lie? I've been typing cowardly lying because he just ditched his whole bank.
Larry, there was one question I wanted to ask. In your view, how is the Wallace vote cutting tonight? Well, I think that it has followed a pattern. Its strength in the South.
Lying.
Significant strength beyond its own. That his current figure in the popular vote will drop as the evening goes along. Was he hurting your man more than Mr. Nixon at this point? Well, it depends on what states may be talking about. I think it varies from state to state, but perhaps the variance is rather slight overall. I just know this, that the current Wallace percentage of the popular vote will drop in the next several hours and drop significantly. Larry O'Brien, the top man for the Democratic National Committee. Thank you very much. Back to you, Walter. Morton, before you say goodbye,
Yeah, I'm about to run out of phone battery. Oh, no, no.
Nixon, Wallace, or for your man. I really don't think so, Walter. This is a horse race in the key states. It's rather a traditional close presidential contest. I don't think there have been any particular surprises, and I think as this popular vote continues to rise...
I just like the way that Queen and Jack look, I think.
Significant numbers of electoral votes, so here we go.
I think that's how people are with card games.
16% of the national vote counted now. Nixon holds a 1% lead, 41% to Humphrey, 40, and Wallace is 19. Dan Rather, how's the...
All right, so I'm at 50% to the red or to the black. I don't know. I think being in the red is negative, so I'm whatever 50% loss right now.
All of those are simply a state where we don't see any trend, and there are two surprises in that. That the Republicans had expected to run away with Illinois and to do very well in Ohio. Missouri was always considered rather close, but leading Nixon.
And to reiterate, I'm trying to be at 20%. game.
number of our sample precincts reporting in all 3 of those states, and the Democrat, Hubert Humphrey, is actually leading in the actual vote figures in Illinois, but that's only with 11% of the vote in. Now, in the Minnesota presidential race, CBS News estimates that Humphrey wins in Minnesota. Now, that is the second state in the Midwest in which CBS News estimates Humphrey has won, Michigan with 21 electoral votes being the other. And in Minnesota, CBS News estimates that Humphrey carries his home state with 56%, and Nixon's 38%, George Wallace with 5%. However, it's still a heartstopper in Ohio and Illinois, and that's the big story in the Midwest.
This is Walter Cronkite at CBS News Election Headquarters.
CBS News coverage of Election Night 68.
When I say I'm trying to be at a 20% gain, because my biggest win was 6 million. Right now I'm at 1.8 million. 20% of 6 million is 1.5 million. So when I'm trying to get a 20% gain to be in the black,
and George Wallace of Alabama with 2.75 million votes, 19% of the vote. CBS News estimates that in the state
am I going to bet
Richard
my
Nixon
whole
will win.
bank
All
on
the
a
votes
5 and
have been
an
counted
ace?
there, with 57% of the vote, Humphrey 38%, and Wallace 5% of the vote. CBS News estimates that in Rhode Island, Humphrey will win there with 65% of the vote, Nixon 31%, and Wallace 4% of the vote. With those new figures in our CBS News estimates, we now have 10 states, one for Richard Nixon, with a total of 88 electoral votes. They are Kentucky, Florida, North Carolina, Indiana, Kansas, Vermont, Oklahoma, Virginia, Arizona, and North Dakota. Humphrey has won 67 electoral votes in the states of Connecticut, West Virginia, District of Columbia, Massachusetts, Michigan, Minnesota, and Rhode Island. Wallace has won 4 states in the Deep South, Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi, and Louisiana for 39 electoral votes. It's interesting to note the states in which they are leading. Humphrey is leading in New York and Pennsylvania, which would give him 72 more electoral votes for a total of 139. Nixon is leading in South Carolina, Tennessee, Iowa, Nebraska, South Dakota, Wisconsin, and Colorado, which would give him a total of 54 votes if he won all of those
20K.
43 electoral votes. It takes 270 to win. Wallace is leading now in no states. Many prominent senators are up for re-election this year, and out in Chicago, one of them is in our WBBM area with WBBM TV correspondent Robert Osborne, the Senator Everett Dirksen.
Got nothing.
Senator Dirksen, you
Close to a
trailing
straight.
your opponent, trailing even by a little more than you did at this hour in 1962. Why, and do you think you'll be able to come back? Do you think downstate will do it for you again? Why?
Someone gonna raise, and if they don't, I will. 30K.
It was a prediction you would have a
Huge GoFundMe. 120K.
Well, let's see what the ultimate outcome will be. You know, all your fragmented returns are a little like the earth to fell off a 14-story building.
So I went from 50 to 60, so now I'm 60% in the red.
So you make all these fragmentary returns, but that isn't conclusive at all. And it never has been, and I've been through this mill before. And I have no doubt as to what's going to happen finally. Are you surprised, though, by the closeness of it at this hour? Well, I can't tell how many precincts have been recorded, either up here or in the country towns, or what has come from downstairs.
My battery
If you can
percent,
tell
though.
the precincts and the general areas in the country towns, I could give you a far better answer.
She needs something, some regular paper or something.
There are approximately 11% of the precincts primarily.
Buy her,
Senator, one other matter. The presidential race in the state of Illinois is being rated a toss-up right now. It was not figured to be that way by the Republicans on election day. What happened? I don't figure it a toss-up even now. You think it'll show around
What kind of flag?
You got from downstairs.
None.
Downstairs returns, you know, are fragmentary now. Very, very fragmentary. And of course down there they deal mainly with paper ballots. It takes a longer time because that is our law. I had occasion to look at it this morning when I voted. And so you just have to wait until they make their return. And then you get some idea of the result. Senator? Yes, sir. This is Roger Budd in New York. Yeah, Roger.
I got nothing.
Well, what makes you so sure you're going to win? Why don't you believe our machine, Senator? Where have I encountered that doubt on your part before? Well, you don't see any chance at all that you could be whipped. Why should I? Why shouldn't you? I don't know of any reason why I should. You'll go around and fool the country with all these fragmentary returns of yours.
Oh, there's the golden dollar.
An entirely different conclusion. Well, your feeling is that the downstate Illinois is going to put you back in office? Oh, I thought I knew my country and my state very well. And I've been doing a little campaigning like it. Okay, Senator.
You know, it's interesting that Everett Dirksen is of the class of 1950 in the United States Senate. He himself ousted the Democratic leader.
Why is everything gold right now?
He now is the Republican minority leader in the Senate, as we all know, and a very colorful one. But in that same class of his, 1950,
Oh, by
there
her
were two other
pet.
fellows who served 18 years, Wallace Bennett in Utah and Mike Monroney in Oklahoma. Those men, well, Monroney's having his troubles in Oklahoma. I don't think we've got any Utah returns yet, have we? How is we haven't got a race in Utah. But the point is that in both those two races, I don't think Clark raised this against Dirksen in Illinois, but in both Utah and in Oklahoma, the charge was raised by opponents that 18 years was long enough to serve in the Senate. And those were in quotes, because both Monroney and Bennett had run in 1950 saying 18 years was far too long in the Senate because their predecessors were ousted in 18 years in the Senate. So you got an interesting
phone is frozen.
Bennett Monroney class of 50.
Come on.
Color coverage, election night 68. We'll continue in a moment.
Press the button.
40%, Wallace 19%, with 19% of the vote.
Did I bet?
Joe Betty, I think you've got a call from the far west. That's right, Walter. Conservatism.
Oh, I didn't bet.
Go back to the United States Senate.
Full house? What would I have? I would have any of that. Someone had a full house?
Elson, the former administrative aide to the outgoing Democratic Senator Carl Hayden, 91 years old.
Ooh, pocket diamonds though.
Republicans appear to have safely held on to that seat. Peter Dominic going for his second term. Joe, let me interrupt you for a moment. A most important call. CBS
20K.
on the basis of our sample returns in from our
I should probably
will carry New York State.
see how much battery percent. 15%. 20K on that.
That Senate race in Colorado, Walter. Peter Dominic is running with the same kind of lead that Barry Goldwater has in Arizona, 57% to 43% over the former governor, Steve McNichol. Dominic has piled up his lead in the suburbs and small towns, while McNichol was getting the expected large Democratic vote from Denver.
That was so close, man.
Arizona is apparently going completely Republican. Richard Nixon has been declared the winner there. The CBS News estimate says he should take the state of Arizona. And in the governor's race, Jack Williams, this is a two-term seat in Arizona. Jack Williams, a Republican incumbent, looks as though he's going to go back to the state house in Arizona, defeating Sam Goddard, the former governor. So it looks like a gain of one Republican seat in the Senate. Barry Goldwater picking up Carl Hayden's seat, Walter. Peter Dominic hanging on to the Republican Senate seat from Colorado. Let us report quickly what the electoral situation is. You know, it takes 270 votes to win in the Electoral College. And at this moment, we show Hubert Humphrey now with New York in his column and 8 states with a total of 110 electoral votes. Richard Nixon with 10 states in his column.
Do I want to do that?
Wallace has
I
won
don't
3
think
and 4
so.
states, according to our CBS News estimate, the final returns, and he has 39 electoral votes. In the states in which they are leading, we now bring Humphrey with 1 and leading electoral votes to 143, and Nixon to exactly the same total of 143. Mike Wallace, how did Humphrey...
Okay, I'm gonna call it
He ran 2-1.
full game because I just lost a flush with a single
ran just barely ahead. In the suburbs, Nixon ran about
club
55
or
to
whatever.
39, and upstate 56 to 39. He just didn't get enough votes upstate.
I'm gonna wave
Buffalo,
and
Humphrey
tell
carried
him
56 to 36.
sayonara.
There are some other interesting indications of how it went, why it went. In the black ghettos of New York, Humphrey got 92 to Nixon's 6. In the Puerto Rican areas, Humphrey got 78 to Nixon's. You see, Nixon is ahead of the tabulated vote with just 1% of the vote reporting, but we have virtually all of our, there it is. Humphrey 52%, Nixon 43%, Wallace 5. Humphrey the winner according to the CBS News estimate. In the backlash area, surprisingly enough, Hubert Humphrey won 52% to Nixon's 41%. The only, in middle and low income, Humphrey was ahead. In high income areas, Richard Nixon was ahead 50 to 45. That is the first of the 3 states that are big, of course, in the East: New York, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey. Humphrey now has